Okay, so hello everyone. First of all, let me know if you can hear me and then we can get started. Okay, seems like everyone can hear me, so yes, we are ready to go. So, we've got a lot of stuff to talk about, which I suppose is maybe the first topic up for debate, perhaps. I've been seeing some negativity about the announcement, like was it enough and stuff like that. That's an interesting point. But yeah, we'll talk about this. We'll talk about stuff like the Magic the Gathering announcement, of course, plus some of the other stuff that's happened relatively recently. Like, let's not forget that this, just like a bunch of days beforehand, was announced. So, like a brand new Avatar novel coming. Plus, there's some stuff to talk about with some of this other stuff. Where am I going here? The chapter book, we can talk about that, speculate about that. And potential kind of other stuff overall. So, like I said, let's actually open up with this announcement and the idea of, was it enough? Is Paramount's marketing for the franchise terrible? I've seen a very negative turn from the fandom when it comes to this. Whereas I think my overall thoughts are that, question for the chat, I suppose, straight away. Going into the anniversary, so before we were there, did you actually think there would be news on the anniversary? Because I'd been asking the question for, I think, the weeks building up to it, and I very much got the impression from most people that it was, I would like news, but I'm not really sure. I don't really think so. So in that sense, the fact that they confirmed the series on the anniversary is a mega giant piece of news. They actually over delivered compared to where expectations were. And then the fact that there's all this other extra stuff added on that like hasn't been super focused on, like Chibi series, confirmation of season 4 of Brave in the Elements, the book 2 soundtrack, not fully detailed, but they're acknowledging it. They're teasing Comic-Con as potentially being a big thing for them, the Jazzwares toy line, and we'll get into some of the other publishing stuff. Like, there was other stuff added on. But at the same time, there is some weirdness to it. Like, why did they, given what actually happened on the anniversary day, why did nothing really happen on the day? Why did they do it the day before? The only thing I can think of is that when you combine the fact that the press release, which I have here, is this, plus this, plus this, that the anniversary, they are not viewing as a single day. They chose to not focus specifically on the day of the anniversary, and are very much, I think, framing it more as, this is the anniversary year. That's why I think they have all this stuff down here. They're highlighting all this stuff that is actually going to happen over the next while. Because you'll notice they highlight 2025, not the stuff that's out now, but new stuff that's coming. A toy line later in the year, not out right now. And they highlight Comic-Con in a few months' time. They're highlighting just 2025 this year. The build-up year is an anniversary year, and then we'll go into the first year of new stuff, which was sort of interesting. Not to mention, again, the Magic set. I know not everyone is into trading card games, but this was a huge announcement on the actual day of the anniversary. I think that's important to get across, that this is a massive collaboration for Avatar as a franchise. That can't really be underestimated. I get it, it's not the big giant news that we talk about, all that sort of stuff. So, yeah. There's that. And then the other point here, like, say, bit of the idea, like, no visuals, no logo, no promo art. And I'm kind of like, yes, I agree, that's not great, but at the same time, like, has no one seen an announcement of a show or anything like that hasn't had this stuff? Like, that's kind of the way this stuff happens these days, isn't it? Like, so many Star Wars projects where they literally just, here's the name of a movie. Will you ever see it? Well, there's been like 20 of them that haven't happened, where there's been no real details. The same goes for other stuff. Like a lot of Marvel stuff does just get announced as like, here's a title and that's really it. I don't necessarily view this as being this like marketing red flag that some people seem to think it is, because the movie is still a really long time away, ultimately. From a marketing standpoint, the movie is a really long time away. It's still 11 months away from that movie. Are there that many movies out there that are getting significant information drops 11 months out? And the idea is no. And I think as time goes on, we lean away from that more and more. I bring this up, I mentioned this in multiple videos at this point. Look at the way previous franchise movies from Paramount have been done. You can see here that a lot of the stuff happens, like Sonic 3, for instance, like February for like a logo reveal all the way to December. Look at Transformers 1, outside of the title, which had been confirmed a lot earlier, logo reveal in April, the release was actually in September. They do have the marketing stuff take place much closer to release. So this is why I would not panic or be super negative about marketing heading into this stuff, because it's a movie, it's being treated differently than other stuff. Like, it is kind of crazy that we know more about the series now than the movie, which is true, but it's a movie, so it's being more protected. That whole idea. I just think like that's the kind of point here, and especially because I do think, like, I don't know, like how much of perhaps some of the negativity about the marketing is informed by that TikTok that came out from that former Nickelodeon employee. Like, is that a big part of why people are kind of reacting in this way or anything like that? Because that's the impression I got, is that a lot of people were actually going to put up quite positive kind of responses, but then that TikTok from that former Nickelodeon employee dropped, and then all of a sudden it was like, movie confirmed in production hell, movies in hiatus, all of this stuff. And the fact that we had all this like other stuff was kind of like, what? And especially when you then look into that, which I don't think a lot of people properly did, and you find out that the former Nickelodeon employee was like, okay, they worked on the YouTube team at Nickelodeon, specifically on the Avatar YouTube channel, but it was back in 2022. So their insider information, which is what they led with in that video, was information from, as far as we're aware, before proper production began on almost any Avatar Studios project, because we basically know at this point, even though Avatar Studios was announced in 2021, clearly the first year and a half was building up staff for stuff and just coming up with ideas. That's why a lot of the rumors from around that time is basically everything. Everything was a movie, everything was this thing, that sort of stuff like that. That's it's just a weird one on that regard. So you don't think there's all shady stuff going on behind the scenes? It's all going as planned. Well, as far as we're aware publicly, like, absolutely. Like, let me try and sort of find some of this stuff. I'll put up a tweet that I put up because I have the image there. Where is it? Yeah. This. You can see this. For instance, like, movie director Lauren Montgomery from a few days ago posted this Instagram story highlighting that she's just back from visiting Flying Bark Animation in Australia. So that person said the movie was on hiatus. This doesn't line up with that. Jessica Matten, I think back in January, posted images, again, with Lauren Montgomery in the voice acting booth, clearly for the movie. And that was only a few months ago. So, yeah, were there problems on the movie? I do think so. but I do think they were back in like 2022 and maybe part of 2023 because that's when we heard about the layoffs and that sort of stuff. So just in the sense, like, I don't feel that there's really been all that much that's there to make anyone panic about where things are at now, because you can see in the press release they do double down, or I suppose this is technically the triple down on the release date of January 30th 2026. So I think that is somewhat positive, because otherwise I think maybe we're expecting some sort of a delay. Maybe that's the case, but I do think a lot of it is, well, let's wait until we get to like CinemaCon in April, very early April. We would fully expect a movie coming out this close to appear at that event, but we have to come back. We have to wait and see what they do and what does come out of that. That sort of idea. And look, I get it. Like, it is frustrating. It is not ideal by any means, but I'm also like, the series is a year and a half, if not 2 years away. And that's a reason why there's no release date on it. The movie is still over a year away. There's a lot of stuff like on this that is like that. And especially because it is kind of the relaunch of a franchise and not just a kind of random solo movie, I understand why they are being kind of sort of protective of it. But then you have to acknowledge a lot of the other stuff that, like, with this comes the announcement of all this other publishing stuff, toy line, all that sort of stuff. It's coming together. I get why it doesn't feel like it's coming together, because they're not saying as much as they should. But I think I think trying to over-analyze what marketing is like when basically marketing hasn't really started is a little bit kind of rough. Because, you know, let's talk about it when a trailer comes out and maybe they get it wrong. That's maybe a sign that, you know, they're mismanaging this. But I do think some people are jumping a little bit too hard on the idea of, like, Paramount don't know how to treat Avatar. And it's like, no, I think it's Paramount don't know how to treat Avatar like a year away from the premiere of anything. When the big stuff is what they're really kind of focused on, primarily. And that's a problem for, like, every production. Nearly anything, there's a struggle when it comes to announcing stuff. Like, even Sonic 3, super successful movie. The fandom was freaking out because of how long it was taking for a lot of this stuff to actually happen. But that worked out basically ideal. Transformers 1, slightly different situation where they actually got the tone of trailer 1 wrong, and potentially that did mess up aspects of, like, the marketing on this movie overall, even though the movie itself was actually quite good. I don't think we have to worry about that style of thing, but again, I would just highlight that we're about 3, 4, maybe even a little bit longer months away from needing to panic about, like, marketing is nowhere just yet. We all want the information. It's not great, but, like, you know, we have to also be aware of where we're at. That if we didn't get this news, we were in a situation where this series had never been officially acknowledged. Now we have an announcement for this series and a bunch of other stuff. That's good. So let's actually get into it here. Let's get into the announcement here. Because, you know, as much as everyone's talking about bad marketing, they did drop a major piece of news. So, Nickelodeon is continuing the mythology and adventure of the beloved animated series Avatar: The Last Airbender with Avatar 7 Havens. So straight away, I think it's worth talking about the title there. I don't think any of us predicted that, wait, they're allowed to just subtitle it Avatar? And then 7 Havens? Like, there's no need for this to be Avatar Legends. There's no need to include the name of the Avatar, like Avatar Legend of whoever. And then a subtitle. Like, oh, they're allowed to do this. That's very interesting. As in, like, Korra does not have Avatar officially in the title, but this does. Why is that? Is it just that time has advanced on and there's a realization just that there are two Avatar franchises, and while it's funny at times that they are similar in some very obvious visual ways, kind of, it's also very clear one is a kind of live action movie franchise, one is an animated thing, that sort of idea. That's part of my guess, is that because this is very clearly that they're allowed to do it, not to mention like it specifically is, you know, in brackets, Avatar Seven Havens, like full stop. It's not Avatar. They still have to refer to the franchise, as you can sort of see mainly with Avatar The Last Airbender, Avatar Legends, like Avatar Verse, all these words coming out. They're not just calling it the Avatar franchise, but they are allowed to title their movies like Avatar subtitle, I guess. Plus, you know, James Cameron's Avatar is a movie series. This is a, you know, ultimately it will be a streaming series, I guess. There's not going to be that real awkwardness, I think, with it or anything like that. That sort of thing. But yeah, from creators Mike and Brian, the original 26 episode 2D animated series. So a lot of that stuff is interesting. This is confirmation of information that we did have. It is going to be 26 episodes. And then for some people, just because of some of the information that have been out there, 2D animated is also a very important clarification here. It centers around a young earthbender who discovers she's the new Avatar. The news was announced today by, you know, Ramsey Naito, Paramount, Nickelodeon Animation. We get the standard quotes. There's nothing really super interesting to talk about here overall, other than it's Paramount are excited about this, Mike and Brian are excited about this. You can't really overly read into their comments, obviously, because it's such a basic announcement, but it is nice to see overall. Here is the official description for the series. So, Avatar Seven Havens is set in a world shattered by a devastating cataclysm. A young earthbender discovers she's the new Avatar after Korra. But in this dangerous era, that title marks her as humanity's destroyer, not its savior. Hunted by both human and spirit enemies, she and her long-lost twin must uncover their mysterious origins and save the Seven Havens before civilization's last strongholds collapse. So, very, very interesting stuff here. Obviously, if you've seen the leaks from December, actually before December, this matches up basically perfectly. There's really only one new piece of information we didn't know from the leaks, and that is that the Avatar is hunted by both human and spirit enemies, and potentially, I suppose, just the idea that, like, I guess the Avatar is publicly known as humanity's destroyer, whereas maybe from the leaks you could interpret it as no one knows what exactly happened at the end of the past era. This is actually creating the idea that no, it does seem to be a known thing, or at least groups of people do know this. So spirits are present in the series, but, you know, human and spirit enemies is interesting, as in, do spirits also blame the Avatar for what happened to the world, which almost makes you go like, does that mean spirits were not inherently responsible for whatever maybe did or didn't happen? And straight away, it is a mystery. Like, there's clearly a mystery about what exactly did or didn't happen here, that sort of idea. Interestingly, they don't name the two characters, to the point where it's maybe a little bit tricky to actually determine, like, which one's Pavi they're referring to and which one is Nisha. But I'm guessing the idea is that it's Pavi who then comes into contact with her long-lost twin, and then that sort of idea. So very, very clearly, you know, there's a plan here. And obviously, like we saw in December, like we're seeing now, many people have overreacted to this. In the sense that there has been a negative response. I would say, I think overall, broadly speaking, it's been met with positivity, because it's one of those unfortunate situations where if you're too hardcore into the fan base, it's fans who are the ones, I think, giving out about this, whereas I think most people are just like, hey, new Avatar, that's cool, which is kind of my fundamental take on this, is just we're very quickly approaching what other fandoms have approached, like Star Wars especially recently, of just like Mission Impossible. You know, Star Wars fans actually like Star Wars. We're very quickly getting into, do Avatar fans even like Avatar territory with some of this stuff? And it's just a real struggle with the idea, the concept of change. And what I think is very disappointing about some of the reaction to this is that it is coming from a lot of major Korra fans. The group that went through this when we went from Avatar to Korra had to deal with the new show being hated, and now they're the ones kind of leading some of the hate towards this show. It's really kind of cruelly ironic that is kind of what's happening here. And with regards to this idea that like people are trying to present that like, you know, they hate Korra, look at what they're doing, they're ruining her legacy, they're doing this, and it's like, yeah, this is so on the nose. This is so aggressively, that's what they're doing. Do you really not think the reality of the situation is that there is more to this than meets the eye? That the very nature of the series, as mentioned here, mysterious origins, that there's a mystery going on here, that's what we're about overall. Yes, but major thanks to Oracle for the massive super chat there. Here's to a new era of Avatar Legends franchise. I definitely agree. So, you know, that is the thing. It's just like, where's the positivity, I think, to a certain degree, coming from some of the most hardcore sections of the fan base? That we have waited, it's been like, since the announcement of a series, like the last time we got an announcement was like, what, 14, 15 years ago when Korra was announced? And it feels like some fans have made it their mission to just absolutely ruin this day, ruin this announcement. And it's so kind of frustrating to see that happen in the fandom. A fandom that I usually associate as being relatively good with a lot of stuff, but it just seems to be going in a bad direction. I don't know how worried it makes me about like the future necessarily, because I think the movies will probably be exactly what a lot of people want because it is ATLA. But I think a lot of people probably might have to just accept that Avatar advancing just isn't for them for whatever reason. It's an awkward situation, definitely. But yeah, that's my fundamental thoughts on this, and I think I said this a lot when we talked about the leaks as well, is that it's so obvious that they're not going to just leave it at this. Like, does anyone actually think this is just going to be how the series is? Korra will forever have a tainted legacy. We go through the new avatars discovering exactly what happened. They talk to Korra in past life scenes, and Korra's just like, yeah, I messed up. I destroyed the world. Sorry, guys. I did a bad thing. And just everyone is quote-unquote correct about Korra being this terrible avatar. That's not what they're going to do. Like, I know some people will argue against this, but two of the biggest people who care deeply about Korra and want the best for Korra are Mike and Brian. And literally, I think the fact that this show is the next Avatar and the only past life left is Korra should speak to the idea that they're not trying to move away from Korra or anything like this. No, look at this series description. This actually opens the door to Korra being somewhat heavily involved, like a mystery about what happened at the end of the previous era, is a factor in the show. So it's they almost can't not do anything with Korra, because they have to answer some questions about what happened there, and it makes what sometimes can be a sort of, I think, maybe overdone thing at times in the franchise, past life scene. It makes that sort of almost a requirement and necessary, and something that's going to be massive to build up to when, I guess, Pavi speaks to Korra. That's not just like a big spiritual moment for Pavi, it's also like the truth of the world being revealed. Why are things the way they are? And that's a massive moment as well. That's going to be like super exciting. And the other thing, and I think it's maybe coming up in chat a little bit, is that a lot of the response from Korra fans is, it's not even that like if things were okay, they hate the kind of concept for the series, they hate the new series. It's they hate that this will probably lead, or has led to, will lead to more hate for Korra. As in, it's nothing really to do with the writing, it's that the Korra haters will hate Korra even more because of this. And I just think that's not really the way to think about it. And I'm glad that Mike and Brian are open to feel like they can do something with Korra. And that, you know, there's going to be maybe some really cool stuff with Korra in here. And that's kind of the exciting thing. I think a lot of people just have to look at the fandom and really think about, do you care what a lot of people on Twitter, on Reddit have to say when they act that way in social media? Because I'm very much at the point now where I just mostly ignore a lot of what happens on social media, and the opinions that people have about things, especially when it comes to pros and cons of Avatar, because I think this fandom has proved it's not kind of it doesn't know the material well enough to have a nuanced discussion about that. We had a great discussion about past Avatar's pros and cons on a live stream. I don't know, it was probably a year ago at this point, but you don't really get that quality of stuff on like Twitter, which is very, very unfortunate. Let's see. How do you think she stops the cataclysm? I suppose this is an interesting point here. It's like there's a devastating cataclysm, then she's somehow regarded as the destroyer. So is what Korra does regarded as being the cataclysm, or is it the idea that there was going to be a cataclysm and then Korra did something and it gets viewed in a very specific way? I'm not really kind of sure kind of overall, but I definitely think that's what they're going to do. It's just that something is going to happen to the world and Korra has to do something extreme to save it. But it will make her look terrible because she effectively is like destroying the world, just in a not as bad way. But she has given hope because of like the Seven Havens and stuff like that. But then you also think about it in terms of like the Seven Havens. How does that all come about? Because if there's just an incident that happens, like the world is about to end, and then Korra steps in and does something, have we already created those cities at this point? Is what Korra does she create those cities? What makes them haven cities in terms of like they're protected from everything else going on? Where are they located in regards to the other nations? That sort of thing. There's some very interesting questions that arise from this, certainly, because it means that straight away this is going to be a super interesting series, because we are not really going to know the world all that well because the world has been shattered, they literally say. But we're probably going to get senses of roughly where we are in the old system as we go through. Like, I'm sure one of them, at the very least, is probably very recognizable as this place. Like, I think the concept art from the leaks that we had kind of looked very much like Omashu, but we'll have to wait and see what actually happens here. I think spirit and human enemies is a very, very cool concept to see how they go about doing this. I like that they highlight mysterious origins for the twins, because obviously from the leaks, we know that there's probably going to be some sort of weirdness when it comes to the powers and how they're exactly done. But it's like, why are their origins mysterious? Like, is there something about like how, when, why they were born? Because like twins, okay, it's a little bit kind of, you know, unique, but like it happens. But what's super unique about these twins? That sort of idea. And then clearly the series is save the seven cities basically before they fall, and hopefully, you know, attempt to reverse what happens in the rest of the world, basically. Yeah, we'll get to talking about the Jin novel kind of afterwards, because that's probably our secondary kind of main topic. We have something kind of big to talk about, definitely. humans transformed by spirits. It's definitely on the table now that that is a known mechanic, which is going to be quite interesting, especially where technology levels are at, that sort of thing. Um, and then yeah, the twin avatar speculation. I would slightly hesitate about how much we bring up the whole details of the twin avatar thing. Again, note that they don't actually clarify that in the official information. That is purely from the leaks. So they clearly want that to be some sort of a reveal. So it's just like we might need to be a little bit careful about what we do and don't say about like some of the leak stuff versus other stuff. And then, yeah, like, there's a lot of timeline stuff that we don't know. Is that, like, does Korra have to sacrifice herself to make this big change in the world? Does she die during this? Or does she do something, but actually everyone's fine for a while, but it's all going to happen, so there's time for everyone to almost, like, know that kind of Korra maybe did something, and then it happens. How old is Korra when this happens? These are questions we don't know, because I know a lot of Korra fans are coming at this from the perspective of I can't believe they killed Korra, as if like we're just ignoring the fact that the cycle continues. Like, that's just a fact of Avatar. That's always going to happen. So a lot of that stuff we don't know, and like, it's not that Korra can't have a happy life up to a certain point. As in, like, don't immediately assume the absolute worst about every factor and aspect of her life. That sort of idea. Let's see. The twins must uncover their mysterious origins. I do think, though, that the old kind of description we had was sort of like along the lines of also the mysteries of the world as well. So I think just in general there are mysteries surrounding almost everything. Like, it's obviously going to be a big thing of, yeah, why is the world this way? That will be a mystery within the show, obviously. What will happen to Republic City? That's a big one. Either it is one of the 7 Haven cities, or like that city is within Republic City or just outside the city, or because I'm assuming they've chosen the locations of these cities pretty well. Like, they have to be somewhat distributed nicely around the world to sort of save everyone. So you assume there has to be at least one in each nation. The Earth Kingdom probably has 2. Maybe there's 3 there because Republic City as well. It creates a bit of an interesting situation there. Like, I guess Northern Water Tribe 1, Southern Water Tribe 1. But then, like, at a certain point, like, are these cities just replacing the main cities of the world? Zaofu would make sense, certainly, as one. That's one of the big things. Is it just that, like, unfortunately, we're forced into a situation where we choose the 7 most notable cities in the world, which I guess would be Ba Sing Se. Let's go like Ba Sing Se, Omashu, Republic City, like Wolf Cove, I guess. Northern Water Tribe, of course. Harry Bulkan. Maybe they do Zaofu instead of Omashu, or they do both. The Air Nation is also kind of like, is it just that would be the Republic City one because Air Temple Island is there? We don't know if they've fully committed to repopulating the other temples. That sort of idea is an interesting one. Then the other part of this is that the world has been shattered by a devastating cataclysm. What does that do to the spirit world? Because the spirit portals are there. There's now 3 spirit portals, remember. Are they part of what's gone wrong? Otherwise, there should still be 3 ways into the spirit world. What's gone on there? We know to a certain degree, the impact on the physical world would have some sort of effect in there, but that'd be interesting. Maybe one of the cities is in the spirit world. That could be sort of interesting. I was just about to say, what if all of them are in the spirit world? But I don't think that's the way they're going to go with it. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, no, we don't know how spirit related it is, definitely. line turtles, are they going to get back involved in something like this? This seems like certainly a way to bring that back into play. Have they reshaped the entire map? Maybe. That's the big thing here. Is just like, has most of the world been turned into, like, as far as we're aware from the leaks, like a desert, and then there's just a constant storm over most of the environment except the Seven Haven cities, but the land masses are mostly the same? Or do we basically have a completely brand new map of the world? I'm not sure how big necessarily the whole kind of situation necessarily is. There's only one line turtle alive, technically. I would say on that point, I don't know if they will absolutely commit to that piece of old lore being the case. Especially because it's so early, it's like pre-beginnings and stuff like that. There's only one line turtle left, the rest of them were hunted. I would view that as definitely an old canon until contradicted piece of information, and that effectively multiple line turtles are absolutely still in play. That is a piece of information that I think they would need to recanonize as like a background kind of piece of lore, to kind of fully commit to it as like a centerpiece of like a theory about the new show in my mind. I get it's there. I just very much wouldn't read into that one all that much just right now. Let's see. Is it in the RPG book? I'd have to check that. Let me quickly show you guys that. Just while we're here. Yeah, this one here. Old Nickelodeon website information on the line turtle. So obviously this is from book 3 when the episode first came out on the old website, which isn't up anymore. This line turtle is the last of its kind. The rest were hunted and killed thousands of years ago. And it's like, that was fine maybe back then, but I think post beginnings, where we don't even know where the line turtles went after they quote unquote like stopped being the like protectors of humanity, when like the age of the line turtles came to an end and the age of the Avatar began. So the idea that humanity somehow found them again and was able to kill them, like, maybe they'll commit to it, maybe they won't, but we'll have to wait and see. Is this in the RPG book? I don't know. That's one I'd have to check. But right now, I think because we're going to reference stuff that may be contradicted with the new Jin book, like this, clearly there's contradictions happening here. Some of the old website information they're clearly sticking to. Some of it they're not. So, for instance, Ursa's old Nickelodeon website information bio completely contradicted. It has a completely different origin story for her and the marriage with Ozai versus what happens in the Search comic. And that's like, that was retconned basically like 10 plus years ago at this point. Jin, they're clearly doing something different with regards to her parents. They're partially using some of it. But then there's other stuff like the June information, the Piandao information they are committing to, but we don't know with the line turtle stuff because it's like so old lore, obviously. But yeah, the only thing from Mike and Brian and what they say is just fantasy mystery. They emphasize mystery in the quote from the creators. So straight away, the creators are asking you to kind of think about what mysteries are there in the description, basically, as presented. Let's see. I'm most looking forward to the new spirit designs. I hope they get as weird as possible with them. Yeah, that is definitely a big thing. Because this series is going to start off and like spirits are just going to be around, some of them as enemies, I guess there'll be some sense of some people are good with spirits. We're going to get to see a lot of them, and that's always an exciting aspect of it. That's the thing. Why was the new movie not announced before the series since it's coming out first? The movie has been announced already. This is where we get into the technicalities of like when was the movie announced. In my mind, I guess technically Janet Varney was the one who revealed the movie at like, what was that, Comic-Con 22, I think it was. She like the video at that panel where she says like the first project will be a movie about Aang and his friends. They basically confirmed that back then, and then there's been other official like Paramount like press releases and stuff like that that have also announced it. We didn't quite get the Nickelodeon press release about the movie, but we got the Paramount press release about the movie like multiple times over. So the movie has been announced. We just never like truly got the description. I can bring up the copyright information description in a second, but we'll get to that. Thanks to Teal for the super chat here. I fear this will all mess with iconography of the franchise. Seems like it can really muddy the branding. Fire Nation gone, Earth Kingdom, etc. With this series, I suppose with this being a new era for the series, like I think it's allowed to have its own stuff, because while I guess this is coming out, we're still going to be thinking about the Aang movie where all the stuff is here. All the books and novels and stuff like that are still going to be set in eras that use the standard nation symbols and stuff like that. It's just that this one new show set in the future is, I guess, either going to have partial usage of stuff like that, or like different stuff. Like I think the only thing we really know so far is some of the guards' uniforms clearly has some sort of icons on like the shoulders and stuff like that, and the chest that designate maybe if they are bender or not or something like that. That's an interesting point. But yeah, I until we see really the full scope of that, I'm not sure like what to really say about that. But the idea is like, given how young these characters are going to be, that like, I'm assuming at the end of Korra's era, we haven't moved past all that stuff. I don't think there's probably any way, like, just all mention of, like, fire symbols and stuff like that get lost in what is effectively, like, 9-10 years. And I think that's probably going to be one of the fun parts of the series, is kind of seeing, like, how properly gone are the four nations as we know them. Like, the groups of people that are in each of the 7 cities, like, is it still the case that like they're all like there's an Earth Haven city and it just everyone there is an Earthbender, or are they somehow all mixed up in some way? Like there's a chance for a bunch of stuff to happen. It's kind of interesting. I think that's an interesting kind of point. Like with them being so young, what the ex-employee said, it seems the show is more aimed towards kids, closer to ATLA target audience. Not sure how I feel about that. My immediate response to you is, do you like Avatar: The Last Airbender? If you do and you still like it to this day, then what's the problem with a new Avatar show being targeted at the same audience? I get it. A lot of us liked that Korra was aimed up a little bit. But the franchise is still the franchise, and they're going to aim it at like different audiences to get new people in, and especially with the Avatar Studios being like a full relaunch, I don't mind that really at all. But I also think there is a massive contrast here. The idea of, you look at this description, and it's like, that sounds crazy. And if we didn't know the leaks, you would probably put the age of the character as 100% being like 16, 17, 18 or something like that. But the fact that we're actually going to like kind of blow people's minds here to a certain degree and be like, actually, it's 2 like 8-year-olds. They're even younger than Aang. And it's like, what do we do with that? Like, there's 2 of them, but it's also one of the craziest setups for a series we've ever had. And there is going to be a pretty interesting contrast here of just, I guess, how serious a lot of the world is going to be because everyone is in such a crazy situation. And then the fact that the avatar or avatars are so young, I think that allows for some very interesting stuff. Plus, we don't know what the breakdown's going to be on stuff like, okay, there's a clear book 1 and a book 2, 13 episodes each. They confirmed that. Yeah, they confirmed that here immediately next up. Book 1, 13 half-hour episodes. Book 2, 13 half-hour episodes. There might be a time skip in between I wouldn't be surprised maybe if there is actually something like this, to kind of do something like that. But that's my thoughts on that. And also, like, even in Korra, like, a lot of us really grew to like a lot of the characters that Korra introduced that were on the younger side of things, like Jinora, and seeing Jinora grow into the kind of pseudo main character that she became in, especially as they used her in like book 2 and 3, and then as her appearances in book 4 was very cool to see. Not to mention like Milo, Iki, and so on. So I wouldn't rule that out or anything like that. Certainly. Let's see. I hope they don't drop the season all in one go like Avatar. Absolutely. I think that's probably going to be the big one with this. I don't think they will, because I'm guessing this is going to be on Paramount Plus. They probably will air it on Nickelodeon as well. I'm guessing that's why they really have this format. It is half-hour episodes still, is that it will still air on Nickelodeon, but it will be Paramount Plus. I don't think they're going to do that. I think they have to, air them weekly. They'll do stuff like, I assume, premiere 2 episodes or something like that, premiere 3 episodes. So it might be 13 episodes across like 10 weeks or something like that, but still, we'd be pretty confident at the moment we're not going to get the all at one drop, because that would be crazy. That would be absolutely crazy. Imagine that, like, the movie is going to be like that, where like we wait so long for the movie and then we watch it and it's like, next movie please, and the animators are like, yeah, well, give us 2 years to get there. Imagine they did an entire season all at once. Like, imagine Korra book 1 dropped all at once. Imagine not having those speculation weeks in between, like, Tarlok bloodbends Korra. Like the robot Amon theories and all this other sort of stuff. Imagine all that stuff we don't get in a mystery series as well. I think they know what to do with this. They must know that Korra and Avatar both became what they became because of the format, the speculation, the fandom building that they were allowed to do there. They have to do that for sure. So yeah, that's hugely important. Always changes on the map throughout Avatar history. Shang cities, fire clans, Earth Kingdom becoming democratic, Zaofu, Southern Water Tribe forming new spur portal, etc. Yeah, that's absolutely a very good point. Is that, like, we often forget it, but like, you go back to Wan's time, the nations also don't exist. So people acting like Avatar can't work without the 4 nations. Well, I think a lot of people like beginnings and stuff like that, and actively a lot of people want to go back to beginnings to follow the second Avatar, to get the ancient Avatar world, where effectively you don't have the nations. You quote unquote have them because it's going to be post Line Turtles and there's groups of people who have them, but it's not going to be the same map by any means and stuff like that. So, change, just be open to some change. Let's see, I think there's just some things that you shouldn't mess with. I'm not a fan of twin avatars either, making some odd choices with this world, in my opinion. I like different, but I also like consistent. I think that's a fair point, because it is a massive switch up, but also I do think Korra was a massive switch up. I think like going from almost all the new content they've done, it's always been a massive switch up to a certain degree. And then there is going to be other content that we're going to get the consistency with Aang, and then there is going to be other stuff in there as well. But like, we have to wait and see. Obviously execution is going to be important, very important, to see how this all actually works, especially like what the end of this show is going to be. Like, is this a switch to like fundamentally like change the world forever going forward? Do they even in any way have a plan to maybe follow up this Avatar with the next Avatar to kind of do that like immediately? Or are we going to maybe take a little bit of a break in terms of advancing forward? And and maybe commit more to developing, fleshing out the kind of the stuff in the past. And that's why I think I'm very okay with them doing very different stuff going forward, is because we've got like 90 avatars in the timeline that we know nothing about, where we can do classical avatar with. That's not even Korra level, certainly not Avatar Pavi level. We can do all of that stuff at some point in the future, and it seems like there's at least some plans there with like the video game avatar for the AAA game being set like thousands of years ago, and stuff like that. And again, yeah, twin avatars. We have to wait and see what it is. Because there's been every speculation imaginable. I covered it, I think, when I covered the leaks and stuff like that. There's ways for it to work. There's obviously new lore, new scenarios that can happen to make some of this stuff make sense. I don't think they will purposefully attempt to be controversial just for the sake of being controversial when it comes to this stuff. So that's going to be interesting. So there's that. Yeah, the Aunt Wu prediction. Yeah, that's a fun one. Will we get the details to figure that one out? Avatar Generations, yes, or IP, because I don't think there's too much hype from a lot of people about Realms Collide necessarily. I think the fact that they're so slow to announce that causing some problems at this point, but we'll see what happens. Had to leave the Avatar and Korra subreddits because they were so negative. Yes, unfortunately, that seems to be where we're at the moment. I'm fascinated. This is why I'm fascinated to see what the reaction is when we finally get some stuff more concretely about the movie, where that is absolutely going to be aimed like nostalgia-wise at like original fans. And that's going to be a real tester, I think, to see how things are. Whereas I think if people reject that in the same way that this is kind of being rejected by some fans, I think we probably know that some people are just not super into Avatar anymore. There is just a sense where you liked Avatar for a certain period of time, or you liked one or two of the Avatar things, but you, for whatever reason, don't like what Avatar is when it expands out. I think that it's fine for that to happen, and you're getting, I think, a lot of the usual stuff of like, no, but I like Avatar and I want it to be this way. Why are they going in that direction? But it is frustrating to see that kind of happen and the fandom sort of fracture in a certain way. But when we say fandom as like a contained thing, that's rarely ever the case. Like, we were lucky that like ATLA itself was universally liked, but at the same time, bring up shipping even to this day, and you'll see a split across the board on social media. Like the fact that like Katang Zutara's stuff still happens to this day. Say the wrong thing on social media and you will awaken, a sleeping dragon, is, it's always been there in the fandom. It's always there in every fandom. It's just about what you choose to interact with within the fandom overall. And I think for me, I feel I've kind of moved a little bit away from overly maybe trying to interact with the fandom at large, because from my point of view, I'm kind of like, I've been covering Avatar on the channel for years. I trust my own opinion. Do I really need to care what ATLA TWT says about this or that? Their hot take about this or that? When like I feel I know my stuff, I don't really need to. So yeah, the crew, that's a big question. What Korra characters are still going to be around in this show? We have to wait and see on that. Jinora, I think, is probably like a lot of people's pick, certainly. It feels like they kind of have to do the idea of she was a spiritual guide to one, she can more directly be the mentor to the next one, perhaps. That's that. That's actually a good point from Callum. What's the alternative to maybe doing what they're doing right now? Just running a solid idea into the ground like SpongeBob and a bunch of other Nick IP. That, like, yeah, is that what we really wanted? Is just very standard next Avatar. It's Republic City, but there's a little bit more technology, but now the character's an earthbender. Like, you do have to be careful, and I think you can maybe see that with some of the RPG stuff, trying to flesh out the different eras. Like, you have to go deep sometimes to create changes in the world, and if you don't do something big, then is there actually any uniqueness to this era versus some of the other ones? Like, there is that like aspect to it as well. And that's why Mike and Brian, I think so far, have done a very good job with the franchise of making all the eras feel quite distinct and different so far, and this one looks to be quite different again. But we'll see what they do there. They need the concept stuff, and I think that's one thing with Mike and Brian, because they almost have felt a little bit detached from the fandom. They're still quite creative about things overall, so you can't accuse them of like milking the franchise dry by just doing the same thing over and over again, when they probably could to somewhat great success. They want to do something massively creative each time. But obviously there's a bit of a business deal going on with Avatar Studios, I guess, where like clearly they probably, if they had the choice, would probably not do the Aang movie. But I'm guessing as part of the deal to have Avatar Studios be a thing, that it's like, hey, make some adult Aang movies for us, and we will let you do kind of whatever you want with the series. And that's the sort of freedom I think they wanted, while also acknowledging that, like, yeah, those movies will probably make the franchise a success, that sort of thing. That's the thing. Bit upset there was no visual or logo. Absolutely. We talked about the marketing stuff earlier on. I don't think it's a disaster that they didn't do it. My point is probably more that they certainly didn't maximize the day that they had, where people were thinking about Avatar. They were looking for Avatar stuff. They didn't maximize the day, but at the same time, they still announced a new series. So they did kind of what they needed to do, and now they actually have another day where they can announce news whenever they actually do show visuals for the first time. Like, I don't know, Comic-Con, I guess, because we will note here, in the press release, Comic-Con does get mentioned. They don't mention panels or anything like that, but clearly the fact that they have a lot of this other fan experience stuff going on, this probably has to be a year they have something big going on, so they've set themselves up maybe for a little bit later on. Rohan, of course, is a very young character from Korra, so he very much should be alive unless something happened to him. And so, and again, a lot depends on how much time has passed as well. Yue, yeah, there's some interesting points about spirit characters and stuff like that. Definitely. Do the Shang cities have a connection to the Havens? I wouldn't say so. Overall, there, maybe one of them is close to one of them, but my guess is that there really isn't a direct connection overall there. Like, that would kind of be a bit of an odd comparison, like the reveal coming out of like Korra randomly mentioning, and I created 4 of the Haven cities where the old Shang cities from the Yang Chen era used to be. That'd be a bit of a weird reference, but who knows. And then that's the other point, is if Korra inadvertently has created a sort of bad legacy for the Avatar, there's going to be groups of people who do know what happened. Like, if we meet an older Asami, she's obviously going to be Korra Defender number 1, and like she'll know the truth. If we meet older Bolin, older Mako, or like, Jinora, or any of those characters, they're going to be like, I like, the people don't know what actually happened. We do know most of it, but like maybe Korra is the only one who knows the full thing. Those are going to be big moments. In the same way that like K-109, episode 9 of book 1, Heir of Korra. How exciting was it to see all the characters in that flashback sequence? And the idea is that it seems like they're borderline going to do stuff like that again for this series to a certain degree. Let's see. What else do we have here? Avatar Studios got to hire me to do marketing, missing out on so many opportunities. I think yes and no. Like, but at the same time, I'm like, I think it would be weird if they were posting super regular news this far out. It's not. It's still early, so again, I wouldn't be like super freaking out just yet. Yeah, that's a good point as well. Like they left Netflix where they were potentially doing a retelling to jump on board for Avatar Studios to do new stuff. Like, yeah, they want to be creative, definitely. The theory that Pavi isn't the next Avatar basically after Korra, but is instead 4 generations ahead. It directly says, though... Yeah, it directly says she's the new Avatar after Korra. Like, I suppose, mystery, sure. There's maybe a way they can say there's some forgotten eras or something like that. But I do believe they are just going for she is the next Avatar. I think that is just the case. Buff Grandma Korra, maybe. Which is the question, I suppose, because certain avatars do appear older, like, say, Roku. Other ones, not so much. So, I don't know. It depends on how long Korra lived, but my guess is that if they maybe showed her again, I'm guessing we're probably going to maybe see, I don't know, like 40-year-old Korra, perhaps, might be kind of more what they go for, which by itself would be super interesting. Older Asami, where does the technology get to? When does the cataclysm happen? How does that affect what technology is possible? And especially for Avatar, like, clearly there's, I think, a sense that spirit technology, to a certain degree, spirit vine technology, is going to help technology improve, but that's an interesting kind of direction they can go in as well. Korra literally... Do you think Korra literally reshaped the continents or combine the spirit world with the physical world? Combine the spirit world with the physical world. That's certainly an interesting one. That, like, what if it is some sort of situation where, like, this is true balance, is the two worlds becoming one? Like, 3 portals combining just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and suddenly, like, they just somehow combine together. That could be an interesting way to do it. At the same time, I kind of read a lot of the leak stuff more as the physical world just has had something happen to it. Again, like I said earlier, it makes what happened in the spirit world super interesting. Like, is that affected? Is the spirit world safer than anywhere else? Or is there some sort of a thing where, like, no humans are allowed into the spirit world anymore, and stuff still hasn't improved, that sort of stuff. What do you think the new animal guide will be? Well, if you've seen the leaks, we already know the new animal guides. So I don't know, like where are people at with the spoilers on the whole leak stuff there with regards to what people do and don't know? Because we basically have what I'm guessing is final designs for animal guides for our avatars. So there's not really any speculation to have. We kind of know, is the interesting point. But let's see, as we go through this, no animation studio, or they say Nick Animation, like, are they making this in-house, like, by themselves? Like, there is no direct animation studio involved, or have they just not revealed that yet? Because I guess it's from Nickelodeon Animation in that, like, they do all the kind of concept work, I guess. I'm assuming we just don't have an animation studio attached. Maybe it is Flying Bark. Maybe Studio Mir's back on board. I don't think we know for sure. But anyway, there's that. Ethan Spalding is involved. Sahaj Sethi as another co-executive producer, which is interesting. Additional news of the premiere date and casting will be announced at a later date. And again, remember, they've done casting as of like 2 years ago, so they know who they have basically already, that sort of thing. So that's interesting. Here's the mention in the press release. Yeah, so the anniversary press release for the movie. Paramount Pictures, a Nickelodeon movie's highly anticipated, untitled animated Aang Avatar film, debuts in theaters January 30th, 2026, featuring a voice cast that includes Dave Bautista, Dion Kwan, Jessica Matten, Roman Zaragoza, and introducing Eric Nam. So, this is just reiterating information we had before. January 30th is the date we've had all of this time, so that's fine. That's like the third time sort of officially that's been mentioned. We've kind of gone maybe a little bit backwards on the name. We had working title Aang the Last Airbender, now we're back to untitled Aang the Last Airbender. And then note, very notably, no Dante Bosco, which has been reported, I think, incorrectly multiple times across the place that he is in for Zuko when he's not. Note again also that the copyright information says Stephen Yeun is involved in this. He has not been like officially directly in any sort of like news article announced, but the assumption might be that is Stephen Yeun in as Zuko rather than Dante Bosco to fully switch up the cast. So no real additional information on the movie, but also we didn't go backwards with news. Like, we didn't get a delay here or anything like that. They're still committing to the date, as in like it's under a year. You're confirming that still under a year. That's all good. Yes, I would have appreciated something. I think given that they announced the show, so they went from 0 to sort of like 5 or 10 out of 100 maybe with this announcement here. It finally exists. Whereas with the movie, we're maybe at like a 5 out of 100 and they didn't really take it any further. So we're still waiting for the next kind of step here. So we're still early on, obviously, on this stuff, with the hope being that like as the months pass going forward, we will really start to add up stuff. CinemaCon coming up. I think our panel, so Paramount panel, will be April 3rd, so last day of that convention. It is behind closed doors, remember, so we're not gonna see whatever they maybe show, but there will be reports coming out of that. So I'm assuming they might use that day to maybe announce some stuff about the movie, or at the very least we'll hear about what was said. So there is that stuff. So I would say, if there's a marketing missed opportunity, they missed an opportunity to show off a piece of art officially here. This is the proper missed opportunity, is on the 21st that they didn't show the first teaser poster. I do think that is the case. It would be quite early, I get it, but like, you know, that's just the way they did it. So we'll have to wait and see for that. Yeah, the news comes as Nickelodeon celebrates the milestone 20th anniversary of Avatar with all new digital content across the Paramount ecosystem. One-of-a-kind experiences, exclusive consumer products and games. And yeah, it's been popular. Upcoming film, and so on. And we'll get into the anniversary stuff as we go into this next. If there is a trailer or teaser at Comic-Con, I think they might drop it online. A lot depends on what they show, because I think usually at these events, when they show off a movie, they show off like a scene or a trailer, but they're maybe not ready to show it publicly. But sometimes they'll do a thing where like, and publicly we will like officially reveal the title and the logo and like a poster. So you don't get to see the trailer that the people at the event got to see, but at least we get something. I'm thinking that's what they may end up doing here. Because certainly by the time we get to April, like about 9 months to go, that's certainly in range. That's certainly when we should be expecting things. Like, it will be frustrating if the CinemaCon news is just reports about what happened behind closed doors and there is nothing publicly said. Because at a certain point, they have to like have that movie like listed on the website, links to, you know, early pre-order tickets, stuff like that. That I guess that will only happen a little bit later on, but you know, you get my point, is that you want to have somewhere where you can direct people to when they think of this movie, where they can find some basic information on it, which kind of isn't the case right now. So let's go through this, because again, I think this was a little bit forgotten in all of this. Only places that posted the full press release really talked about it, like Variety, for instance, basically just said, oh yeah, and Paramount are doing a bunch of other stuff for the anniversary. We're not going to tell you though. YouTube Chibi Minis are coming. 2D animated Chibi style stories based on classic scenes from Avatar and humorous spin-off comics. Interesting. And again, it's highlights for the anniversary. So I'm guessing the anniversary basically lasts, as far as we're aware, now until basically February next year. But I almost interpret the way they word it as the rest of 2025, kind of is kind of the way they're going for it. So Chibi Minis, very interesting. We've had this before. I'm assuming it's going to be the same sort of chibi designs, but just, I guess, more modern, because it will be done this era. Based on scenes from Avatar, like, this is where, like, the question I would ask is, would you also describe the original chibi shorts as being based off scenes from Avatar? I guess, but it's a weird way to say they're sort of non-canon chibi stuff. But I don't really know. And then, and humorous spin-off comics. So, like, what way do you read this? These are 2D chibi stories. They're based on scenes from Avatar and spin-off comics. So does that mean they're based on spin-off comics? Or are they saying the 2D shorts are based off Avatar and also there are spin-off comics? There's a bit of a, is this included or separate? I actually don't know what way to interpret that. Because I'm like, what humorous spin-off comics that you would base something on are you talking about? So, I don't know. I'm guessing this just means that, like, there'll be a mix of animated and comics, I guess. Not sure how I feel about this. Maybe people who are more into Roblox. This kind of, I guess, is maybe probably meant to more appeal to kids who are super into Roblox, I guess. That sort of thing. Don't know what to think about that necessarily. Short form series using the game's engine, reenactments of scenes from Avatar. This seems a little bit more like comedy based, but like it won't have the sort of the kind of artistry, I suppose, that we're maybe expecting from, like, hey, these will be animated. So that's that. Also note the distinction that they make here. They refer to two separate YouTube channels, which is quite interesting. So the ATLA channel, not Avatar Legends, is the now, I guess, rebranded Spanish Avatar YouTube channel, which is going to be the place for new and established fans of the original Nickelodeon series. So they're going for sort of like, here's the channel for the casual fans. Okay. And then the newly branded Avatar Legends channel, which is like the original English Avatar channel, is the place to go for tuned-in fans of the franchise, with content spanning the generations of Avatars past and those to come. So, that's interesting. So, like, are they just basically saying, okay, if you only care about ATLA, here's this channel. If you care about the rest of the franchise, including Avatar, come here. That's a really interesting distinction. I guess it works, but it's also kind of weird. I think early on I get this, though, because I think your Avatar Legends branding outside of hardcore fans is going to take a long time for people to get what you mean by it. So I think you are still going to have a while where the franchise gets referred to as it's the Avatar world, it's the Avatar The Last Airbender universe. And no matter how much you keep telling people Avatar Legends, it's maybe never going to fully catch on for a while. So that's interesting. They note that the Brave and the Elements stuff is going to be on the Legends channel, because like their new season upcoming is on Korra, which isn't ATLA, obviously. 30 episodes, so that seems somewhat similar to what they've done before. Production's underway. Audio episodes when listeners get their podcasts. And I think they said, because they did a video on this as well, they said there would also be a news focus, I guess, on this, which I would not say is a thing with this podcast for seasons 1, 2, and 3. I would not say news was in any way a focus of their channel. They, on occasion, used them as a way to deliver news. I would say the video game thing is the closest we've got to a proper news update, including them. But that's that. This will be exciting. I'm much more interested in listening to the podcast talk about Korra than I am about Avatar, just because I feel like Avatar almost has been talked into the ground. But I'm fascinated to see like how they do the discussions, what the discussions are about when it comes to Korra. So that's going to be interesting. So there's that. I suppose while we're here, does anyone know anything about, because I have heard about this news that apparently they took down the exclusive feed for the Brave and the Elements podcast, or something happened with that where like that just kind of disappeared, went away. I heard someone saying that they lost access to it or something like that. I always felt it was never a super great thing that like the official like Nickelodeon Avatar podcast had like an exclusive feed with bonus content, but maybe they're moving away from that, but I don't actually know what the case is overall. Because again, I'm guessing they didn't do an announcement about that kind of maybe negative thing happening, but we'll see what the situation is. Then this was probably my prediction for, well, if they're not going to talk about animated news, this is probably the product thing they will talk about. Book 2 Earth, music from the animated series. So the soundtrack for Book 2, confirmed for quite a while. Like Jeremy Zuckerman has said about it a few times, it's coming. This is like the first time it's actually been officially acknowledged. Like we have that official titling for it and stuff like that. So yeah, all new digital album featuring the score from seasons 2 of Avatar animated series. Information is coming soon on the release date, that sort of stuff. That's the big thing. So we'll see when this exactly happens. This is maybe some of the weird stuff about this section of the kind of press release announcements, is that there's a lot of, here's this thing that's new. Where do I go for information? Like, when you say coming soon, when? Like, is that a couple of weeks? Is that 6 months? But still, it is nice to hear this, just to know that it is coming, because I'm guessing a lot of people probably who don't pay attention to like Jeremy Zuckerman on Instagram probably didn't know maybe what the situation was, because it's been a while since book 1. Quick note on this, if you do look at Jeremy Zuckerman's stuff, book 3 soundtrack for Avatar is going to happen. The plan is then to go into Korra soundtracks as well. Like, just to be clear on that, Korra is planned at some point. It's just they're doing them in order, and clearly it's going to take a while to do each of them. Maybe it will speed up when we enter Korra, because of course that stuff was done with sort of better technology, so I suppose it's a little bit, it's probably just in general better quality. There might still be some stuff they maybe want to redo or something like that, but I'm guessing there'll be an easier run of things getting the Korra soundtracks out compared to the re-recordings basically they're doing for like all the Avatar stuff. So that's that. So yeah, there's that. Location-based experiences. Avatar in Concert's not new, but more dates to be added is sort of like, okay, cool. So it's not just up to where it is right now on the website. More dates will be coming. So, for instance, they still haven't gone to Ireland. I'm hoping there's eventually an Ireland date. And then I think there is stuff like the website for Avatar in Concert says there's an Asian tour, and I don't think there's been any date added to that section. So that's going to be part of that, I guess, as well. How do you think the Korra soundtrack will be different from the one we got back in the day? The Korra Book 1 soundtrack, I'm guessing it will be mostly the same, though I would note there were tracks that were in the show that were missing from the soundtrack that actually were available through Coronation. So if you did the Coronation kind of social media thing while Korra was airing, you actually got a digital download pack with about like 3-4 tracks. And I think one or two of those tracks from book one were not actually on the actual official release when it came out. So I'm guessing it might just be like a couple of extra tracks longer and be a little bit more complete than what we got then. But otherwise, I don't think most of us would be super upset if they did just kind of do the re-release of that one, because it was fairly substantial overall. We'll get into talking about the Jin novel next. So once we finished going through some of the press release stuff, we'll get into the novel stuff in a second. So there's that. San Diego Comic-Con. Nickelodeon will honor Avatar through immersive fan experiences, exclusive consumer product giveaways, more to be announced in the coming months. So, of course, we'll find out about the details about like what panels they have like the month beforehand. So at some point in like June, we'll know what's happening. At the very least, we know there's probably going to be a publishing panel. The big thing is going to be, will there be an Avatar Studios panel, like an animation panel? Feels like there kind of has to be, but we'll see what they do there. Mall of America is just a celebration. On March 29th, there's going to be a celebration where you can get airbrush tattoos and get photos taken with Aang. Aang's going to be there somehow. That's interesting. And then we'll get into consumer products and gaming. Okay, so this is good. First mention of the Jazzwares toy line in quite a while, because this was only really mentioned in like a press release like months ago. So it is nice to get further confirmation. The big toy line, and it is a full-on toy line, is coming this year. Again, more details will be announced soon. They're not quite ready, but they're telling you to kind of be aware a toy line is coming. And I think this is a big one in terms of like, I don't think there's disasters behind the scenes at Avatar Studios, because I think the toy line launching kind of puts a bit of a timer on things. They know they're going to have a certain amount of stuff like out there so that people know Avatar is a big thing, so that when these toys drop, there's going to be a popularity surrounding them, and they kind of can't miss again. They have to get it right here. So the toy line, I think, is going to be a very notable thing when we start to hear about it, because we still don't really know the full scope of it. I'm guessing it's going to initially be ATLA focused, but we'll see if there's hints at other parts of the franchise in there. If this is the line, movie stuff will go into, that sort of thing. This is very interesting, though. This is huge, and I'm kind of excited for it. New publishing stuff. In 2025, so they actually confirm here in this case, this is not just random in the future this stuff will happen, but this year this stuff will happen. A brand new middle grade chapter series from Random House. This is Bending Academy. We'll talk about this more in a second. A new YA series from Abrams. This is Avatar Legends. So the first one is City of Echoes. This is the Jin novel. And then the Dark Horse stuff here. This is super exciting. A new comic mini-series from Dark Horse. And I'm like, what's that? Comic mini-series? Like, what format is that? Because, again, we're only used to basically 72-page one-shots. Three 72-page books being a trilogy. A somewhat equivalent length book that's like a short story collection. And then Free Comic Book Day is the only time you ever see like a floppy single issue comic for Avatar. So does this mean like the first Avatar comic that will be a like single issue type thing? Because otherwise it's like, what does this mean? It's not a return to trilogies, I'd guess, because I think they just say that. Duologies? Are we doing like two books maybe? I don't think so. Is this finally the format opening up a little bit, where we maybe get issues, or we just get books that are a little bit maybe smaller, but maybe a bit more regularly? Obviously without an announcement and knowing like, you know, what era is it set in? Is this Avatar? Is this Korra? Is this tie in to animated content in any way? It's hard to say. The next one, is pretty clear. You all know, kind of in the chat, you know what this is. Beast of the Four Nations. This is what this has to be, right? A new illustrated hardcover. Like, there's no way this is the way they're referring to one of the other like hardcover books. Like, do we even? I forget which is the release that we actually have this year. So this is an omnibus. Do we actually have any hardcovers announced for the year? No, I don't think so. So yeah, it's omnibus stuff that still has to happen. So yeah, that has to be Beast of the Four Nations, because we got the news a bunch of months ago that it is still being worked on. New illustrated, as in, okay, it's not new if it's a reprint book. The Beast of the Four Nations book has new illustrations in it, so this year, confirmed for this year, would be the takeaway from this overall. Let's see, I'm not familiar with the term comic miniseries. What does that mean for other comics? For instance, like Marvel or like DC, like Batman or something like this, like a Batman miniseries would be like, this is a 4-issue miniseries where each issue is like 20 to 22 pages. And it would release monthly, basically. So across 4 months, you'd get like Batman versus Joker Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, Part 4 type thing. And it's just a side story, but it's a kind of complete story to itself type thing. Batman versus Joker is probably not a good idea of a miniseries, but anyway, something like that. So for Avatar, the idea would be like, yeah, I'm guessing if they are allowed, I guess, in the format idea to, it probably would be like 4-issue miniseries or something like that. I'm wondering, does this mean anything with regards to what am I trying to think of here? What's the place that does the scrolling comics? They basically just adapt the comics into the single scroll format. I'm completely blanking on the publisher's name or the website name, because they said they might be able to get their own comics. So maybe this is like the physical version of that. Webtoon, yeah, that's it, Webtoon. Maybe this is connected to Webtoons to a certain degree, where like maybe Webtoons will announce that they're doing their own thing, and this is how Dark Horse is going to print that. Maybe, I don't know. And then yeah, miniseries in the build up to like a movie, like, or something like that. That's certainly possible. The cookbook we already know about. That is this book. It's the official baking book. Not super exciting. We don't really know a lot about it yet, but that's what it is. This is new. The adult activity book from Thunder Bay. I don't know what this is. Let me actually look this up. I looked this up very briefly before. Let's see. Thunder Bay Books. Let's go in here. What do we got here? Taylor Swift Coloring and Activity Book. I guess that's kind of what we're doing here. Anything a little bit more relevant. Browse books. What do we got here? Let's try Star Wars. What have they got? Okay, so stuff like this. These type of books. Paper models. So yeah, look, I guess it's just a little bit of a step above a kind of kids coloring book activity type thing. More aimed at adults. That seems fine to me. Because note, we also have an official Avatar sticker book very recently announced, which also seems to be more of a kids activity book style thing. So that's cool. And then new installments in the ongoing graphic novel series from Dark Horse and much more. So that would be the one-shot comics. Now, this is maybe a question for chat here. Would you consider the books that are literally out in the next couple of weeks to be like what they're talking about here? Does this mean for 2025, the Mako comic, which is out in like 2 weeks, under 2 weeks, that's technically a 2025 new installment? Ashes of the Academy, which is out like 3 weeks later, is an installment in the ongoing graphic novel series? Or does it mean that we're actually more talking about the next ones for a bunch of months down the line? Either way, we're still expecting new one-shots. It's just, is this publishing thing here talking about it being this year? I'm guessing because they're not out yet, it is just referring to that. So it's not a guarantee that like Korra One Shot 2 and Avatar One Shot 7 are this year. I'm assuming one of them is this year for sure, but I don't really know. Especially the Korra stuff, because of what happened with that book, I have no clue what the schedule is into the future for those books at all. I trust the Avatar team to be pretty kind of rapid fire. I just don't know where the Korra stuff is at the moment. So there's that. So there's that. But anyway, Box Lunch, not too much to say here. They've had merch for years. Avatar Battlegrounds is the Roblox game, and Realms Collide is the mobile game. Roblox and mobile game here. Still not out yet, though I think they're building up to getting towards the announcement. I think. So global release I don't think is too far away, but at the same time, like, they keep getting the sense that like we're this close to the announcement, and then it's just like it's not going to happen now. I don't really know. Frustrating, but anyway, there is that. So yeah, that's the press release. I like it because like I said earlier, this clear sense where like this will all drop on the day of the anniversary, but that they do sort of consider the rest of this year, the build-up year going into Avatar Studios, as the anniversary year. And they have stuff planned. And the fact that like there are some in-person events, stuff like this, more than just the concert. They're highlighting stuff like the return of the podcast, Chibi Shorts, the YouTube. This is the, I guess this is the short form content from the original Avatar Studios announcement finally happening. And then, yeah, a lot of this stuff is actually quite exciting. Now, what are our thoughts, I suppose, on specifically these two things? Like, when are these getting announced? Is this publishing panel this year, like SDCC? This is a lock for SDCC. That's my guess, I think. But at the same time, actually, if they only announce it at SDCC, that would mean, like, the release would have to be, for it to come out in 2025, they're going to announce it well before then. Because they always announce books like at least, like the absolute latest is probably going to be like 4 months before release. But that's still almost cutting it too close for a book. So like I'm going to guess we have to find out about this soon. I'm assuming the way this is going to happen is going to open up Edelweiss one day a few weeks from now, and these books will be there. Something like that. Might be separate days, but something along those lines is going to happen. That's my guess for the way that this is going to happen. Maybe Beast of the Four Nations will actually get a proper kind of news kind of rollout or something like that, but I'm not really sure overall. Really hope we get monthly comics in the single issue format. I think it's a way for the comics to evolve. Definitely. Because one thing I'll say, I just earlier on today recorded my spoiler review for the Mako comic, Mystery of Pension Island. I purposefully, after recording my early non-spoiler review, read it a few times in or around recording that, of course, and afterwards. But then hadn't touched the book for maybe like 2.5 months. Went back to read it a bunch of times before I did the spoiler review. And yeah, one of the big things with that book is definitely like, yeah, the 72-page one-shot it's a nice amount of content, but it doesn't fit every story. That's kind of one of the big takeaways, I think, from that Mako comic, is that it's not that book is bad, but you can tell there's a bit of a struggle with the format. And I think we need to have the capacity for different formats of stories. So a mini-series can be as low as like 2 or 3 issues, but it can be as big as maybe like 6 or 7. So that opens the door in different ways where, you know, straight away that allows them to do like 44-page comics, 66, 88, and going up in multiples of 22, basically. That's pretty good. Single issues get announced months in advance for the comic shop pre-orders. Yeah, yeah, that's true as well. If it's a graphic novel, it gets solicited like way in advance. Single issue comics is more like 4 months, I think typically for most publishers. You get the solicitations for the first issue 4 months beforehand, and so on. At least that's what I remember from kind of following that for certain comic series. So yeah, these are going to be kind of exciting when they happen. Like, yeah, Beast of the Four Nations has been... We've waited for this for so long. So long. Do I have that here? What's this? There we go. I actually have the image already up. Just in case people aren't aware of this book. I'm assuming a lot of my audience is aware of what I am referring to with this. But Beast of the Four Nations, the reason I talk about it as if it's like everyone knows about it is because, like, yeah, this was announced years ago. Like, are we talking 2021 here? Like... off the top of my head, I think it was like 2021 because, yeah, we're basically thinking Avatar Studios forming caused some issues, basically. And that's why it's been put on the back burner for so long. But when they say new illustrated hardcover, we all heavily believe it to be this book about the animals of Avatar and Korra. All new art, kind of part art book, part encyclopedia. Hopefully, that's the case. So, yeah, that's the press release. Now, let's get into this. So, I'll actually do this first. I'll do this one first. Because technically, this, I guess, was something that happened as well. Not as many people talking about this, because obviously we don't have the cover yet. That sort of idea. Loading. Here we go. Yeah. I covered this in the news video. Didn't get the impression that many people maybe fully took in what this one was about. But yeah, the Bending Academy chapter book. So this is, brand new middle grade chapter series from Penguin Random House. And that's what this is. 4 young firebenders entered their island's regional firebending tournament in the first book of this new original chapter book series, taking place in the world of Avatar: The Last Airbender. Adaki dreams of being a powerful firebender, but at 11 years old, he feels he's not where he should be. So when the chance to train with his school's best firebending master arises, Adaki jumps at the opportunity, even though it means he and his friends will have to compete in a tournament full of older kids with more experience and more attitude. When training does not go as planned, what do cooking and math have to do with being a firebender? Adaki begins to wonder, can he and his friends overcome their inexperience and defeat the older competitors? This funny, action-packed story is the first in a new illustrated chapter book series set in the world of Avatar Legends, perfect for young readers. And yeah, it is coming out September 2nd. It's 144 pages, so it is a substantial book, like it's a middle grade novel. It's going to have some art in it. We don't have the cover yet, but I guess we'll get that in the next month or 2, maybe 3. So not too far away, hopefully. I think this is kind of exciting. I think initially it had a description referencing an earthbending academy. With the switch to it being on a fire island is actually, I think, quite exciting. This has classic, tournament arc aspects to it. That's going to be cool to see, like, what tricks the master, is it an old master, teaches them to outdo the older students. Because, like, I don't get the impression that this is maybe Agni Kai's. It's just like more tournament firebending. So, what does that mean? What do they do here? And then there's a little bit of like cooking, math. That's interesting. Like, what's going to be the angle on that overall? Sounds cool, I think. And then again, it is an Avatar Legends book, so there is the opportunity for this not just to be set in the ATLA era. I'm going to guess the first one probably is. But as we go forward, I'm guessing they'll be able to switch and do other stuff. So yeah, it says in the world of Avatar: The Last Airbender, but I do interpret that to just mean it's set in the Avatar verse, as in it's not a direct confirmation, it's set during ATLA. Because this almost seems too, like, peaceful for, like, ATLA era. Post-war, perhaps. certainly. And not during ATLA. Set in the comic timeline, perhaps, yes, absolutely. Korra, certainly, I think I can imagine this, definitely. Earlier eras, perhaps Roku era, maybe. But I don't know. If it is very happy-go-lucky, I'm thinking it's post-war ATLA or Korra era. But that might just be the tone of the book. It still could be set in a slightly darker Fire Nation era. It just won't focus on those aspects. Hard to say overall. Anything interesting again with this one in the key selling points? Not really. Yeah, it's going to be fun. Like, it's another novel for the year, bringing us up to 3 novels for the year, which is exciting. And yeah, sounds fun. Like, it's going to be Adaki and his friends, and it's going to be like, you know, trying to predict like, oh, which one's going to get knocked out first. Obviously, the idea, I'm guessing, is that Adaki maybe goes all the way, but then where do we go from there? Like, is there continuity between this, or is it going to change every book? I'm not sure. It's 144 pages, so there's definitely room to tell a full story, basically, and then move on to something else. Because I definitely get the impression there probably is an Earthbending Academy book at some point. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, there's not too much to say right now until I think we see some visuals, we get some preview pages, which, like, it's weird because it's a Penguin Random House book where the preview stuff tends to be a little bit weird. But, like, it is a full novel. Will this get a digital release, unlike some of their other books? I'm not sure. Yeah, Waterbending Academy actually sounds quite interesting. Like, because when you think about this, it feels like we almost have a little bit of a foundation in terms of like, yeah, we've roughly seen how, you know, Earthbenders kind of Firebenders are trained to a certain degree, kind of Airbenders to a certain degree. Yeah, but waterbending, especially if it's set in the right place, is kind of interesting. The equivalent stuff for Minecraft do have digital versions. Okay, so that's good. That's definitely good. So I hopefully will be able to get this day of release at the very least. So that's exciting. So there's that. And yeah, from there we'll move on to City of Echoes. Just get the cover up actually first, just in case people haven't seen this yet. So this is from the announcement here, though it was announced a bit before. This is the YA series from Abrams that is new, that's been announced. This is, of course, City of Echoes. Note, it's called Avatar Legends as well. Specifically, this is the title of the series. So Chronicles of the Avatar is the Kyoshi Yangchen Roku series. Avatar Legends is a series about the unsung heroes of the Avatar world. New series featuring the unsung heroes behind legendary events within the world of Avatar: The Last Airbender and Legend of Korra. So they do mention Korra here, unlike the other series which only mentions Avatar, but I think they're saying the same thing, basically. Could we have multi-bending academy like a Republic City middle school? Absolutely. I think because it's Avatar Legends, all eras are open, so there could definitely be some sort of a school in Republic City that has multiple disciplines, definitely. So let's talk about this one. There is no war outside of these walls. That is what the citizens of Ba Sing Se are told to believe, but Jin knows better. As a refugee whose parents were killed by the Fire Nation, she's haunted by her past. Now she does her best to keep her head down in the lower ring, caring for her ailing grandfather and balancing school with survival. Her one bright spot is her best friend Susu, whose family treats Jin like one of their own and whose bakery she helps make deliveries for. Her world shatters when Susu's father gambles away the bakery and Susu is forced to take a contract in the upper ring to pay off the family's debt. Jin vows to help her friend no matter what it takes. A chain of events fueled by her desperate promise leads Jin to Xuan, an arrogant boy from the middle ring with ties to the Silver Fangs, a major player in the city's black market. The deeper Jin delves into her double life, the more she learns about Susu's own entanglement in a conspiracy darker and more dangerous than she could have imagined. As whispers swirl of the Avatar's presence within the city's walls, the Fire Nation creeps ever closer. With Ba Sing Se teetering on the brink of revolution, Jin must defy the powerful forces that control her city and risk everything for the friend she's determined to save. Wow. A lot here. Compared to some of the maybe lacking in detail stuff that we've just recently talked about. Like, that's quite a description here, going quite in depth. A lot of stuff to talk about. Obviously notable. Jin, the girl from the Tales of Ba Sing Se episode, Zuko's story. Known for going on the date with Zuko and people quite liking the little relationship that they had. But otherwise, like, okay, character traits about Jin, it's like, she's very fun, friendly, bubbly, but also kind of forward. I guess a romantic as well. But that kind of is mostly it. So it's very much a free shot at a book here, where there's not too much stuff to work with the character, just based on the episode. Now, there's a little bit of lore about Jin from the old Nickelodeon website. You'll note here that very clearly they're going in a slightly different direction, so there are some retcons here, but this is her old character description from Book 2 Earth. You have to admire her. She's asked Zuko out. She wouldn't strike you as aggressive or even very assertive, but she's able to get what she wants in a nice way. She's understanding, kind, and a true romantic. It's a shame Zuko's so messed up. She could have really been good for him. Like most people in the lower ring, Jin's parents were refugees who moved to the city. They have struggled much of their life, but they have been strong and able to provide for their family. And then they also note the fountain that they go to in the episode, where Zuko lights it up. This is a place where Jin's mom and dad snuck out to meet as teenagers, which is why she views that as being her favorite place in the city, basically. So there's a bit of continuity here. Now, obviously, this very much implies they're still alive. Whereas, of course, our new description here literally says that her parents were killed. So they've made that decision to change it from her having stable family. They're struggling, but they're doing okay in the lower ring, to now instead her parents are gone. Her family member left is a grandfather, and actually her friend is the kind of the focus person for her. One thing I'm a little bit confused on is exactly when this book is set. Because Zuko doesn't get mentioned here, of course. Then we get whisper swirl of the Avatar's presence within the city's walls, which is, okay, straight away, episode 13 onwards. So the drill onwards. The Fire Nation creeps ever closer. So we're talking about circa the drill. But then Ba Sing Se is teetering on the brink of revolution. And it's like, when does that happen? Is Ba Sing Se prior to like episode 17, 18, 19, 20 teetering on the brink of revolution? It's a bit weird. But then I'll also bring this up. The author posted about this on Instagram. Specifically, I want to talk about this. I got to expand on Ba Sing Se and what was happening in Ba Sing Se during the coup. You'll get to see a few more familiar faces make an appearance in the story, as well as a lot of other shenanigans, of course. Jin's many people's favorite minor character, and so on. But the coup. So that's like Azula and Long Feng kind of doing their thing. This is Azula's coup, right? Which obviously changes things, because that means actually, I guess, all of or most of the book will be set after her date with Zuko rather than before, I'm guessing. So I wonder what the situation is on that side of things. That's what I'm a little bit kind of confused about. Like, when they say Ba Sing Se during the coup, is that actually talking about that incident, or is this her way of referring to just the Long Feng conspiracy, quote unquote, that is there's no war outside of these walls? Like, is Azula basically here, or are we pre-Azula? That's kind of the question I suppose I have here. The actual coup, where like the Council of Five get taken down and stuff like that, is the only one where you would say maybe the quote unquote revolution within the city, but also they're teasing the idea that this series is where does it actually say this bit? Yeah, they're doing 2 novels a year, so Chronicles of the Avatar is not stopping. Unsung heroes within the Avatar universe, including the ways they have shaped legendary events in Avatar history. So they're trying to imply that Jin does something in her plot in this book that affects the way the Ba Sing Se arc kind of plans out from like behind the scenes. So, it's this idea that, does she interact with the Dai Li at some point in the middle of everything going down? Does she see Mei Azula Ty Lee undercover at some point? That sort of thing is also quite interesting. The other point, actually, I suppose that's worth making is that I almost forget this, but like, Jin is also in one of the Lost Adventure comics as well. So there is that as well. And she actually meets Mei there. So I'm wondering, like, is that going to be kept canon as well? Or what? That's an interesting one. I actually feel like I need to read that kind of comic right now. So let me just bring that up in the background. Here, because I actually just completely remembered, like, oh yeah, she's in that as well. Because I'm fascinated to see if they keep that canon, if they maybe, as one of the older comics, decide to maybe move past that, that sort of thing. But yeah, where are we going here? This is end of book 2, isn't it? Me panicked trying to get to this information here. Is it this one or no? I think it's before this, isn't it? Oh no, it is this one. Going Home Again. Yeah, that's it, isn't it? Okay, so where's the Jin stuff? Okay, so this is post-coup. Yeah, because it's just before they go home. Okay, yeah. Mei and Ty Lee, yeah. They walk around, then Jin meets him and says, yeah, I can't believe it's been so long. Who's this? Friend from the circus gets brought up. Okay. Stand over there. They kind of show off. Jin's a bit embarrassed. It's a very minor appearance. So, in much the same way as the other one, I'm guessing it's ultimately relatively irrelevant to what actually happens. So that's interesting to see what way that goes. But yeah, otherwise, it's pretty clear here. They're highlighting that at some point, Jin goes from the lower ring to the middle ring to the upper ring. And that she will come across what exactly is going on in Susu's life and learn about the darker conspiracy and how dangerous it is up top. So Dai Li is certainly going to be involved. Implying that maybe Long Feng is going to be involved as well. The city's black market, that's going to be something that we kind of get a look into as well, which seems quite interesting. We get a new character here. What is the contract that Susu takes in the upper ring to pay off the family's debt? Like, what does that mean? Why is she so worried about her potentially doing something like this in the upper ring? Why does this bring her into contact with this character here? Entanglement in a conspiracy. So Susu somehow gets involved in this. And I'm like, I think I mentioned this on the podcast recently as like, what if she's been almost quote unquote hired to become a Judy? What if this is how they get people? It's like, oh, you're in debt. You seem perfect to be a potential Judy of the future. What if she somehow ends up finding out about the brainwashing stuff going on in the city? That would be a kind of interesting thing to do. And be super interesting because we see what they do to people about like when they go crazy about the war. But we, other than seeing all the Judys, maybe haven't really seen what they specifically asked them to do with the brainwashing and that sort of thing. So that would be kind of cool. She maybe gets to save her from becoming a new Judy. Maybe we meet the original. I say the original. Is it the original? The first Judy that we meet. That would be kind of interesting, certainly. And then stuff like, the guy Pong or whatever his name is who lives in the upper ring. Is he going to be in the episode? Some people who were at the party. That sort of idea would be kind of cool. If she does meet Long Feng. Long Feng actually has a somewhat interesting, like, implied kind of like backstory stuff. So if we did get some focus on him, that could be, I think, quite interesting as well. But there's certainly a lot going on, which is going to be interesting, because they have to balance the idea of kind of connecting the idea that she has all this kind of crazy stuff actually going on in her life, but is still someone who's like out there looking for love, who literally visits the tea shop with Zuko like every day because she likes him, but also she has all this other stuff going on, and that she is inherently positive. That has to be a part of like the characterization here. And then like, how do they balance the idea of like what happened to her parents, and some of the timeline stuff? Because the takeaway from this information would be that at the very least, like, Jin and Jin's mom and dad have been in the city for a relatively long time, if they sort of went on dates basically as teenagers. So they've been in the city for quite a while. Obviously implying Jin grew up in lived her whole life in Ba Sing Se, which they're maybe not saying here necessarily. So like, what happens to the parents to get them killed? Like, were they killed on the way here, and actually Jin's somewhat recent herself to Ba Sing Se? There's some questions that definitely are going to have to come up here, because they're clearly doing some elements of retconning overall. Like, there's clearly a tragic backstory that she's haunted by. So that's interesting. Maybe they are going to somehow be like her new parents, Susu's family, but I'm not sure about that. Susu's father gambling away the bakery. To who? Is, I suppose, an interesting point, perhaps. The Silver Fangs. And then, yeah. I'm guessing this covers a relatively large period of time. I'm going to assume that this covers... They're going to tie it in, because they do say that in like the key selling points, that the novels will feature encounters with familiar fan favorite characters along the characters' journeys. I'm guessing they're going to want to play into some of the Zuko stuff a little bit, so we're at least going to cover before and then like afterwards as well, type thing. So probably like backstory is obviously going to be like well before the series if we get any of that. But then I'm assuming it'll be the drill all the way up to, I'm guessing, like Crossroads of Destiny, or at least part of that, which is kind of interesting. So yeah, there's some stuff here. Like there's some interesting stuff. There's a backstory, what happened to the parents. There's a bunch of other new characters that are going to get introduced, and then just like characterizing Jin beyond just the very friendly aspect, like the idea that she's going to have to do a little bit of kind of stealth work almost. They have to kind of balance that in terms of like how over the top are they going to maybe go or not go, with regards to like how much of a stealth operative she kind of ends up being in all of this stuff, in terms of being able to get into the other parts of the city easy or not. And then like there's some world building to be done there about like, oh yeah, if you're in the lower ring, is it easy to just get up to the higher rings if you don't already have a connection there? That idea. So I'm very excited for this. I think this is a very cool idea. Yes, maybe Jin is certainly, I think, not the first character you would think of for something like this, but is definitely, I think, a good choice, because I think people like this character a lot and want to know more. But then the big thing with this is that you do get to develop Ba Sing Se super heavily. So it kind of highlights that one aspect of this series is probably going to be the world building of the location. So when we get to thinking about potential other aspects of like what's going on, for like future books, we also need to think about characters who live in interesting locations as well. So there's that. Final thing I just want to mention is almost forgotten maybe in some of the discussion is, do we have any thoughts on the title of the book, City of Echoes? Obviously referring to Ba Sing Se, but specifically the word echoes in relation to like Ba Sing Se. What does that actually mean? What's it referring to? Why echoes, not any other word? And then visually on the cover, what do you think the significance is of the green ribbon going through the title around Jin? Because it's not really a part of her character that she wears a notable green ribbon, at least that we saw in the episodes necessarily, especially because like a lot of Earth Kingdom people wear a certain amount of green, but this specific color of green ribbon, does it mean anything? Is it just part of the artistry of the cover? Is there a significance here? I'm not sure. I'm guessing maybe from a plot perspective, maybe the ribbon is more Susu's thing, and we maybe will set up the idea that going forward maybe Jin wears this new ribbon or something like that. Not really sure overall. Let's see, question there. Do we see Jin in the montage when we start book 3? Yeah, because there is a collection of stuff, isn't there, as everyone comes through. Do we get that here? I think so. But how specific is it? It just highlights that she's still in the city when it gets, like, fully occupied, I guess, is the takeaway there. Yeah, just for anyone wondering what I'm talking about there. Yeah, from 301. As the walls are coming down, they do the montage. There is Jin freaking out about what's going on. So she's still in the city. It just kind of highlights a little bit of details there. So there's that. So that's that flashback there. Echoes and aftershocks. I'd be very surprised if that's what they really mean by that, because that was movie related. The brainwashing point might be on the table, just because, yeah, the Yan Chen books alluded to sort of maybe some of the origins of brainwashing, but didn't really go in depth on it, whereas that absolutely is a possibility for to be something Jin finds out about. But we have to wait and see. It's just a fun one, because the idea of this character who we just think of as being like maybe one of the most normal characters in maybe the entire series, actually was up to some crazy stuff right in between all of her appearances. That, like, we're potentially going to get situations where, like, we find out that actually Jin has just come back from the upper ring of the city and spying on people, and is sitting in the tea shop asking Zuko out on a date, and it's just almost like it goes from being like, you're a fun character, to being, Jin, are you okay? I think you have other things to pay attention to, but that's the situation. So there's that. And then, yeah, this is an ongoing series. So let's speculate. Okay. What other characters will get books in this series? Keeping in mind that, at the very least, Avatar and Korra are possibilities, because the description quite literally says Legend of Korra. So Korra characters are going to be on the table at least at some point. If not the entire franchise. Like, I think minor characters maybe from like Kyoshi's era and other eras like that probably are on the table as well. So just be aware of that. I I tried to do this a lot myself. I think it's actually very difficult to choose because I don't think it's as simple as just, oh, it's just unsung heroes. It probably is unsung heroes, but then it's like YA, so teen character pretty much probably has to be the case as well. That unless they show us that they are willing to do an adult character, I'd be surprised if that is really on the table. So we do need to hear about like a lot of other stuff. So at least to me, I feel like it's like the obvious ones are Haru, Jet, Longshot, Smellerby, and then like, you know, the rest of the team. Probably less likely for the rest of the team in terms of like the Duke, Pipsqueak, you know, the Duke and Pipsqueak perhaps, Sneers, maybe. That'd be a real interesting one, the Sneers novel. But, you know, he's kind of interesting. They gave him focus in the comics when we didn't expect it, and that was interesting. Longshot, I actually think has a ton of potential. Like, why doesn't he speak much? Why did he learn how to do archery? What happened to him in terms of his backstory with the Fire Nation? And the same goes for a lot of the other characters who are kind of paired up with Jet. Jet himself is probably too notable of a character, I would say. There's that idea. You could probably tell a story with Jet, but I'm not sure he fully fits this necessarily. It feels like we hit on most of the main things overall in that regard. Teo is a possibility. Quickly going back to Haru, there's some stories to tell with Haru. Maybe not prior to the series, but certainly maybe in between appearances where like post imprisoned. Because of Katara, he's now been reunited with his father, so those two getting to know each other again. Avatar Generations touched on a little bit of this, but you know, a full-on novel would be kind of nice to cover that. Them basically fighting for the Earth Kingdom in between like their appearances, arriving back for the invasion. Maybe what they got up to afterwards would be kind of interesting. What did the Team Avatar B Squad get up to when they separated at the start of was it 316? I think it was. You know, what were they up to at the air temple they were at? Maybe do that. Do Team Avatar B Squad, like Haru, the Duke, Teo. Just do the whole gang there. And have them get up to some sort of an incident. That could be a quite fun one, where you actually include, like, you know, a few of them, like Haru, Teo, and the Duke, which is kind of interesting. So there's them. Actually, do I have my other list of characters here so I don't have to try and form this from memory again? Where did I do this? Here. Yeah, I'll actually just bring this over. Okay, so this actually has a full list of characters. I just picked out basically everyone here. So like from ATLA. So Gyatso probably not because he's in the novels and he's an adult. Cabbage Merchant already has his own book, My Cabbages, and I'd be surprised if they did anything more with him again. King Boomy. I think Order of the White Lotus characters are probably too notable, in my opinion. There's absolutely a book's worth of story to be told with all of them, but I think it's too notable. Haru is probably one of the main highlight characters, so possible Tyro would obviously be in that book for sure. These, I think, are potential likely candidates. The Great Divide Tribes, I think there's an interesting story there, but like, it's a lot of characters. Is it interesting enough? Not really sure. Meng? I'm like, maybe Meng gets up to some crazy stuff after meeting Aang. That could be quite fun. A bit like Jin, kind of like a pick you really wouldn't consider. and there's some interesting stuff going on with her, perhaps. Bato, there's some stories perhaps to be told with him, again, in between his appearances, maybe. They gave June a comic kind of recently, but there's probably still some stories to be told, but I'm going to say maybe no. And then, yeah, there is the interesting point of, like, is it on the table that, like, we just do a full-on flashback book where, like, Boomy as a teenager gets a book and it's Boomy as a teenager. We're not even doing a flashback from present day to the past. I don't know. Zhong, again, are the Order of the White Lotus characters too notable? I'm not sure. Teo, the Mechanist, of course, maybe. Paku, same issue. Han, he's the right age. I would say if it's the Netflix version of Han, perhaps. Animated version, do we want to see that? I don't know. That's an interesting point. Yue, again, probably too notable of a character, but there is a story there probably. Like unsung hero, maybe prior, certainly post book one. That's an interesting story. Like, imagine from the perspective of Yue recently becoming a spirit. What does that mean? How does she feel? That's an interesting concept. Probably a little too maybe deep to get into, something like that. Chong and the Nomads, I think they've appeared in some of the comics. Do we need more on them? Not really sure. Hudu, though, I'm kind of like, yes, I would like a Foggy Swamp Tribe focused book, because I think that's very, very interesting, especially because Hugh is enlightened and, like, super spiritual, and just getting more into the culture of the Foggy Swamp Tribe. But again, I almost can't picture that. Like, big news, everyone. Avatar Legends Book 2 has been announced. It's Hugh and the Foggy Swamp Tribe. And here's the cover. You know, that sort of idea. Earth Rumble characters, maybe. Lau and Poppy, so these are Toph's parents. Is there a story there? Who knows? Lee and his family from Zuko Alone. There's a story there with Lee's brother, who they talk about. Maybe. That maybe is a potential one as like an unsung hero type thing. What does Lee get up to in the aftermath of Zuko Alone? What happens in that town afterwards? Especially when maybe they find out about Zuko's involvement in ending the war. How would they feel? There's some interesting stuff there. Certainly. Professor Zay, obviously what happens to him after the library, but I'm not really sure. King Kwei, there's some room for storytelling there, certainly. Guru Patik is incredibly interesting. Remember, he's 150 years old. So he goes back to the Roku era. Like, you know, this guy is super interesting. Kind of an unsung hero, but is it the story they want to tell necessarily? That actually is a very interesting one there that I completely forgot about. Is this the place to finally get proper Lu Ten content? We know more about him because of the RPG now, and that was interesting material. But I know a lot of people maybe don't super enjoy reading the RPG material because it's story content, but it's not quite story content in the right way, necessarily. So, I don't know. He's certainly, the way he's described, is a bit of an unsung hero character. Probably in or around the age where you could tell a story with him. And definitely a character people would be invested in because we don't know much about him. And it doesn't have to be the story of his death. This can be earlier on. It can cover stuff about like his interaction with his family, his wanting to live up to Iroh's reputation, that sort of thing. Very interesting. And then Aang's classmates from 302. Kuzan, the actual Kuzan might be interesting. Piandao, Ancient Sun Warriors. My one that I want really badly, Chit Sang, of course. He did nothing wrong, and that sort of thing. But also, what is Chit Sang's backstory that allows you to tell a story in a Fire Nation place in the middle of the war. What did he get caught for? Why did they put him in the boiling rock? There's a story there, certainly. Combustion Man. Is Combustion Man an unsung hero? Who knows? So there's that. And then we get into Korra. It gets tricky, I think, with Korra because I think with Avatar we really have a great sense for who the real standout minor characters are. It's maybe a little bit more all over the place with Korra. Gamu, the sparkly bushman, of course, lead the people living underground in the city. Interesting character. I actually think it could work. Lao Gan Lan to tell the other side of the Cabbage Merchant story that we don't really know about. That could be interesting. Hasuk, former Fire Ferret member. Pema, just like earlier point in her life, could be interesting. Properly covered the drama with Lin and Tenzin. That'd be interesting. Senna, again, her and Tonrock before Korra is born. Just more about her in general would be interesting. Like, we know she's a waterbender. Could we maybe see that a little bit or something like that? I have like Katara here and stuff like that just to kind of highlight that, well, maybe from the perspective of like older Katara, a novel could happen. My guess is probably very much goes outside the framework for the series, though. These two, whichever way you want to go with it, is probably my go-to pick. I'll just highlight these. Because Tano is the right age. Very interesting backstory. Because clearly, very talented bender. The team, the Wolfbats, is a very talented team. They must have won their first championship without cheating, is my guess. And the story of sort of how they almost felt like they needed to cheat afterwards to keep their fame. Just a pro-bending, sports-focused story. The drama of that could be interesting. And a very similar thing with Toza, which we've sort of seen already to a certain degree with Republic City Hustle. But I think there's more to tell with him overall as well. The Lieutenant, very unknown character, but extremely loyal to Amon. What's going on? Why is he called the Lieutenant, other than the fact that he is Amon's lieutenant? There's a lot of questions about this guy, but again, he is a villain character, first and foremost. Who knows? Scoochie? Right age. Okay. He's involved on the outside with like triads and stuff like that. He knows stuff going on. Maybe. Who wants to read the Scoochie book? Perhaps. Lightning Bolt Zolt, I think, is a super interesting character because within this is, of course, him training Mako at lightning bending, which is very notable. And how does he know it himself? That makes him a super notable character that he knows lightning bending as a triad member. So there's obviously some backstory there that's interesting. Are Kaya and Boomy too notable of characters to get a story? There's room to work with, but are they too big? Not really sure. Escadesna, again, probably a very similar situation. Asami's mother, Yasuko. Now that we got a little bit from the comics, maybe. Fate's Unsung Hero, I'd like to see more. There's that. Naoki and San. Even post Mystery of Pension Island, I would say this is absolutely still on the table. Of just a full story involving Mako and Bolin's parents, I think is something I would maybe like to see. Grandma Yin, maybe. Let's see. What's this live stream about? We've covered a variety of topics. I started out going over, of course, the big announcement for Avatar earlier on in the week, where we had the new series announced, of course, including a lot of the extra information. Then we basically, from there, went into talking about some of the recent book announcements. which is effectively where we're at now. We just finished up doing some speculation on the new City of Echoes book, and are now speculating about what other characters we might see in this Avatar Legends series about unsung heroes. I wish I'd been here since the start. Well, the stream's going to be up. The second I finish the stream, it'll stay up as a video on demand, so you can definitely go back and listen to the start of it once it's done and stuff like that. Or I think even right now, if you wanted to, you could just start from the start. You'd be offset with the live chat, but there's that. But anyway, that out of the way. Where was I? Here. Yeah. Of course, we have to mention it. Anything one related going all the way back then would be super interesting, just by the nature of it being a era we know relatively little about. Which character, where should it be? It's maybe not the place for it because it's so out there to a certain degree, but like, wow, that would be an interesting book, definitely. There's that. Bonte Tribe, might we finally learn about that sort of stuff, like Jaya maybe. Carrot Guy novel, of course, obviously. Of course. We all know who to pick. Varric Julie. One, the other, some combination. There's a story there. Are they unsung heroes, given that Varric ultimately is a relatively notable character in like 3 of the books, and Julie is currently the president? Maybe. Their origin story is still kind of out there. Varric obviously has a very unique childhood, I guess, which is interesting. So there's that. Obviously, everyone has said it, even though it's probably not in line with what the series is about. Red Lotus origin story. Yes. They're not unsung heroes, really, but novels is, I think, where people want the story. I don't think it's really going to happen. Kai certainly has some interesting backstory. There's some spaces to tell stories with him. Is there room for any of the Beifong siblings to get development, like Opal, any of the other ones? Batar specifically, just from the angle of highlighting his relationship with Kuvira and maybe just developing that a little bit more to highlight what happens as we go into like book 4, that sort of thing. Izumi, of course, I don't think is an unsung hero. She's just a character we all want to know more about that we happen to not know a lot about. And then Iroh 2 is a similar situation. But again, are we only allowed to do young adult characters? I'm not really sure. That sort of thing. Not Legend of Korra or ATLA related, but Sozin's sister Zaison. Maybe, yeah, because on that side of things, yeah, that's definitely a story that is there that I'm kind of like, I get it is the RPG story, but I'm almost like, I hope they don't try to pay that off by telling the story in the RPG, because it's not really a storytelling medium in the way that we want it to be. So yeah, is there the chance for a novel to cover that? I'm not sure. And this is where we get into the stretch of like, Jane is a good pick because it ultimately sets the story in ATLA, and she was a memorable and likable character. Zaison is a much more notable character than Jin, but how many people actually know her in terms of would it sell a book? Not sure. But then yeah, that's probably actually a pretty interesting one here from the other side of things, like Jujita. His missing backstory that felt like it was kind of weird that we moved on from like the Yang Chen books. That might be an opportunity to tell a story with him here. Because they really avoided the whole Yuyan Archer kind of backstory stuff by not really saying too much, implying a little bit, but not really saying a whole lot overall. Yeah, Lek from the Kyoshi novels, that may be a possibility. There's certainly characters like you go back into the Platinum Affair and more tell a story about during that time, involving like Akudan or someone like that. There's a story there. Who else from the novels? I'm not really sure. I'm guessing it will be a while before we get there. I'm assuming the first probably 3 or 4 are going to be like, ATLA Korra, ATLA Korra, or maybe like 3 ATLA, 1 Korra. I'm not sure. But who from Korra really stood out? Because I didn't really get the sense there was a consensus from Korra necessarily. On like actual proper candidates. Like, I think on the Avatar side of things, like the ones I picked out, like Lu Ten, okay, Freedom Fighters, Haru, Teo, and then I suppose my personal choice, Chit Sang, even though I don't think it's actually all that possible. Realistically, probably I'm going like here, who's actually possible. Tano for the pro bending story, I think actually is decent. You might choose another pro bender, maybe from one of the other teams, one of the Rabaru members, something like that. That could be interesting. Otherwise, I'm kind of like, I'm almost feeling like you kind of have to be like something like that. I'm not sure who clearly stands out in the same way. Daw, actually, that's probably a decent one. Actually, perhaps Daw, the first Airbender that they find, might be a possibility. This could be the Lu Ten story. I think Lu Ten actually might work quite well because he is kind of an unsung hero in the sense that he's primarily known for dying. He's known for being a part of Iroh's backstory rather than the stuff that he did on his own. So in that sense, like, his own accomplishments are kind of unsung because he kind of exists as a character in the shadow of his father. So there's a story there, I think. Absolutely. And did I put down Kuzan? A few people said Kuzan as a bit of a, you're going back a little bit into the early Aang era before the ice that's like separated from the rest of things. So where would we put that? I guess that would be up here. So that could be interesting, just to highlight a bit of a different era in a different way. Could be interesting. Original characters. There's the possibility, but I'm guessing the idea based on the description, which again is unsung heroes, the ways that they've shaped legendary events in Avatar history. So I think this is where you have to take another scan through the list and think about, like, okay, characters who were around while other big stuff was happening. In the same way that, like, Jin is in Ba Sing Se while the Ba Sing Se arc of Book 2 happens. That's why she's notable. What about other situations, basically? Shayu, I didn't have him down on the list. Certainly a possibility. That's one. That dude's father, or was it grandfather? Fire Sage Kaja, maybe. And then the other angle probably is like, you could also view this book, the Jim book, as being like, okay, it's going to be a Ba Sing Se exploration. What locations would we like fleshed out more? And then kind of almost fit the character to that. That's what I'm kind of thinking of. Is that like, I'm kind of like, okay, like, say like Northern Water Tribe. Say we want to go really in depth, tell a Northern Water Tribe story. What character can we tell it kind of through? Yue, of course, allows you to tell a story set before the kind of attack happens in the episode. You could do it through Paku. Han technically suddenly comes back into play maybe a little bit to do something there. You think about like, how do we explore, say, Omashu? Well, Bumi, of course, allows us to tell some stuff about like, what is the royalty system in Omashu? Why is he the king? That sort of thing. But there's other characters you can kind of do that with, and so on. It's kind of interesting. Like, I'm almost kind of like, is there a way to set a story in Omashu while Return to Omashu is happening? And you get to see like the Pentapox infestation from like a different character's perspective or something like that. That's maybe the Tom Tom story or something like that. But we basically saw that. That whole situation from Ukano's perspective or something like that. From Michi's perspective. It could be kind of interesting. So there's stuff like that. We'd obviously like to see the Fire Nation in the Korra era, but is there any character who really facilitates that, maybe except Izumi or Iroh? What story do you want told in the Fire Nation? Like, there's Zhongzhong's story about like what the specifics of what happened to him, how he knows Iroh, all of that stuff. Izumi's daughter, who has yet to be, I suppose, 100% like canonized. So I'd be surprised if they just debuted her kind of through that. Ki, I'm thinking they're committing to her being in the comics, and I guess she'll probably get an appearance in the movie. I'd be surprised if they gave Ki a book as well, overall. Other Kyoshi warriors, that's interesting. Yeah, and then you have to think about stuff like that, like in the same way that I said, kind of pro bending drama style story. You could do a similar thing with like the triads. There's room to do some of that stuff if you really want to. We have to see if the series is capable of doing that. Like, is it locked into unsung heroes or not? Like, does it have to be a hero character? Does it have to be a teen or not? Not sure, because that's that situation, of course. Because obviously the Chronicles of the Avatar series, we basically know is locked into, it has to tell the origin stories. Chronicles of the Avatar uses a duology format to tell Avatar's origin story. So any speculation that we've maybe had previously of the Chronicles of the Avatar series being like, oh, we'll cover Roku when he's like 40 years old. No, this is what they're doing. So we'll see. I think the impression I get from this is that we are probably going to be surprised with pretty much every character they choose in this series. I do think this is a big one, though, like in terms of everyone wants to, in some way, twist the definition of what this series is capable of doing to get this story. it's far and away one of the most notable kind of parts of the kind of franchise that feels like it's really missing something, and there's so many interesting characters in there if you were to tell it just like cutting between their stories or just to focus in on one of those characters. There's a story there for all of them. Like Pali as a combustion bender, like finding out, given that we now know how one achieves combustion bending, like who forced her to become that? Was it the warlord, or did she somehow get it before then and then the warlord kind of captured her? Zahir by himself still has a ton of untold backstory. Ming Hua and what's going on with her, like, you know, who got her involved, and like, is there a connection to is there a connection to Unalaq? Was it Unalaq that brought her in on this and stuff like that? That sort of idea. It's an interesting one. Just because I really don't think they fit what the series is about. Like, you can frame characters as like unsung heroes in their own right, but they're still the villains of book 3. I think like it's hard to overly kind of justify that necessarily. Absolutely, we want a novel series about the Red Lotus, but I'm not sure this is really the series for it, even though it's one of the most obvious stories. But I think the idea is that this is not the place for obvious stories in terms of speculation, because the first example is this. As in, if someone told you we are going to get a series of novels, it's about kind of minor characters, really going in depth on a minor character, Jin is on the list somewhere. But she's probably like 10, the number 10 pick or something like that. So they've started off with a pretty low-ish level minor character in terms of there's not much that we know about her. That sort of idea. It's the perfect choice from, I guess, a writer's perspective, because the character has very little history ultimately. She's fun, but you get to do everything else except that core trait, which is interesting. So it maybe almost suggests that some of the more notable minor characters who really have more full-on fleshed out characters might not be what they want to do. That sort of idea. So, excited to see where they go with that, definitely. Whereas, like, again, going back to my list here, it's why someone like Tano is, like, maybe on the table. We got to see him mostly as the villain of that pro-bending arc. But then, when he got his bending taken away, you saw a little bit of a different side of him, to a certain degree. And then, of course, you know, they put him as part of the band kind of later on, but it's like, what's a good guy Tano like earlier on in his career? That sort of idea. There's a story there, perhaps. Whereas I'm not sure how much else they maybe want to do. Yeah, but does anyone like Tano? But that's the point of the book, to make people like Tano. I don't know. Maybe he's not an unsung hero in that regard, but we're trying to come up with ideas here. Within some of the constraints that are perhaps here. It's not really clear. But yeah, I do think a lot of this stuff we kind of need to wait and see what the second book is in the series to see what they could do. Let's see. Yeah, and then like a villain series will be really nice to get. Because like there's room for a lot of stories there. Because like Amon Notok has a story left there to be told, in terms of like how he met Hiroshi, what he did after the end of that backstory in that episode ended, before some of the other stuff happened. There's that. Even when we talk about Red Lotus, part of Unalaq's story is still here to be told in terms of like how he came to join the Red Lotus, specifically meeting Vatu, I guess, for the first time. That sort of idea. The whole orchestrating Korra's kidnapping, the big battle that took place over protecting Korra that they teased so incredibly in book 3, stuff like that. Yeah, there's more Kuvira backstory definitely to go into as well, but we'll have to wait and see. That's most of all of this stuff. The final thing I want to talk about, I guess, is just this, I suppose. Again, like I touched on earlier on, like I know this is not going to appeal to everyone, but it's a major announcement. Like, this is a huge product collaboration Avatar is doing. Avatar Magic the Gathering is really big. The Weiss Schwartz set that they did a few years ago was kind of exciting by itself, but it was also a little bit let down by the fact that there was no new art. Whereas this is going to have basically all new art. Like, I'm pretty sure they're not going to use like any stock imagery like at all anywhere in the set. And just that on its own is exciting. Plus, if you actually like the game, Magic really has a lot of flavorful cards that are going to play super, super well. Really well. So I'm super excited for this, to see how it all comes together, what they do, what some of those really higher end alternate art cards, what they look like, all that sort of stuff. The SpongeBob set, yeah. SpongeBob's not getting the same treatment as Avatar, but yeah, it's getting a secret layer, so there'll at least be a handful of SpongeBob cards. So I guess at the very least you can play Avatar and SpongeBob in your commander deck, which is kind of interesting. And the other thing is that, yeah, like this will also then mean the game's going to be this set will be available for like Magic Arena. So I'm like excited to do like a video doing like doing a booster draft for the Avatar set. That's going to be a fun one when it happens. Not to mention, like, you know, like product opening stuff will be exciting. See what there is. Obviously, it will be a little bit expensive, but also very fun, because surely by the time we get to November, we're going to be in the middle of everything Avatar going on. We'll have a trailer at this point. Who knows what other stuff will be going on. That whole idea. Very exciting. Will be a while, I think, before we get proper details, though. Given the timeline of like the Final Fantasy set, I'm guessing it'll be like 4 months beforehand that we find out about stuff. So probably Comic-Con when we'll find out about it. That's that. And then yeah, definitely. Even if you're not interested in the game, this is just going to be a massive collectible for Avatar fans, and I think a lot of collectors out there have been kind of begging for something like this. Just lots of new, really nice art. It's going to look super good. Let me just quickly find some of the art. I wish they just posted some of the screenshots from the stuff overall, but I think we have some of the stuff. Yeah. So they showed off some of the art, just in case you missed it in the video that I did. All done by a variety of different artists. So you can see here's a pretty nice group shot of the gang on Appa, which is quite cool. You can't quite see it here, but it's more of a background shot of some Water Tribe stuff kind of cutting into kind of mountain range. So I'm thinking this is probably some of the land stuff that maybe has like you can stack the cards side by side to make a kind of montage kind of a image type thing. This Toph, I think, is really nice here from Alex Dos Diaz. So I'd love to see a lot of the main characters get a card like this. Looks super cool. I'm really wondering, is this is this the standard Toph card or anything like that? That's gonna be exciting. There's the set symbol, and then what else? I think there's only really one other image. Yeah, the main image that they kind of led with is this one here. So I'm guessing this might be like some of the product packaging stuff because it's such a group like hero shot type thing. I can't imagine there's really too much kind of else going on with that. Because I can't imagine what card this is on if it's just meant to be like on its own. Is there a Team Avatar card? I'm not really sure. Also, deck boxes coming. Technically, these deck boxes I think are out in like a few weeks. I think that's what they said. So these aren't meant to like sort of coincide necessarily with the Magic set. They'll be out well beforehand, but like collectible deck boxes as well. It's kind of exciting. Let's see. Can Magic fans explain how I should get into the game if I'm interested? I suppose immediately you have to ask yourself the question is, are you only interested in getting into it when the Avatar Magic set comes out, or are you actually trying to get into like playing the game now with the current sets? Like there's a bit of a kind of like question there, because if you only want the Avatar stuff, like what you can do now is probably just like look up like the rules of the game, look up how you kind of play. It'd be stuff like, check what stores nearby stock Magic, where you're going to be able to get the stuff when it comes out for the cheapest, that sort of thing. And a lot depends on what you want to do. Are you planning to collect? Do you want to play? Because there's kind of a bit of a different answer for kind of each overall. Because if you just want to play, then when it comes out, where am I gone here? Let's say go to the Final Fantasy set, because they have the product stuff. When it comes out, like look at all the products that there's probably going to be. Avatar will probably have the same lineup of products as like Final Fantasy has for Magic. Boosters, fancy collector boosters, commander decks, bundles and stuff like that, starter kits. Obviously you can see there's probably going to be an Avatar starter kit set that I believe is just 2 60 card decks, I think it is, where you can play them. I think most of the time these are relatively basic decks, like they're not really too heavily constructed. It's like Magic's only full on like starter stuff. So there'll be probably something like this for Avatar. Otherwise, probably a lot of the recommendation, like especially if you just have a group of friends and just want to get into it, is probably like, if Avatar gets a group of commander decks, 4 of them, just buy the 4 of them and borderline treat it like a board game, where you can play the 4 decks against each other, like one-on-one, or because Commander is a 4-player game as well, you can have 4 people go up against each other at the same time, swap around the decks, stuff like that. Because Avatar's going to get themed decks like this. I'm assuming there'll be like an Aang deck. Will they theme it on each of the 4 nations? It seems like a very obvious choice, but they're going to do something along the lines of that. If you just want to do some basic kind of playing, because if you do want to collect, the idea is probably that actually you probably don't want to buy a lot of booster packs. get some because it's fun to open up, but you probably do just want to like buy singles for if you just want the collection. It's probably going to be like cheaper in that way overall, in that sense. So there's that. Commander's a lot cooler. It might be simpler to start with the standard. Pretty much, like the reality of it is like the extra rules for Commander are not that much compared to the standard game. Really, but yeah, that's the kind of basic idea. So probably like if you are just planning to give it a shot, yeah, go for some sort of a starter set type thing. Maybe if you are really interested, actually buy one of the starter sets that's already available, so you know how to play going into the Avatar set. Completely up to you in terms of what way you want to go about it. But yeah, there's got to be some cool stuff in this. Overall, what's the story behind the carrot thing? This. Mostly just a bit of a joke thing that since that episode aired, Beginnings, the carrot guy's a spirit in Beginnings from Korra, I just kind of latched onto it as like, that's my favorite spirit. I don't care that we know nothing about him. That carrot spirit is my favorite spirit, and I'm just going to make that my profile picture in a lot of places, and that's what it is. It replaced what I previously had was like one of the Aang images that I think I had before, and I think it's just a little bit more kind of unique, I guess, going for that. That's all there really is to it. It's you know, it's the typical logic I suppose anyone has for their kind of profile picture on any sort of social media. It's like, it's just something you're interested in. And he's kind of fun. But yeah, Avatar Magic will be super fun. I don't know, like, do we want to have some speculation here about how they're going to do the cards in terms of like colors and stuff like that? Because that's going to be a very interesting one to see what they do. Again, Magic is divided into there are 5 colors for the casting costs of the cards. So you can see them on some of these cards here. Like this Cloud is he costs 2 red, green, white. So he's a red, green, white kind of multicolor character. This one is white, blue, black. And there can be monocolor cards, double color cards. A lot of these are 3-color cards. You can see some 2 and 1 down here. You can have 4. You can have all 5. And there's definitely a chance for some of the characters to be that. How expensive is Magic normally? These days vary. Or these days, it kind of as expensive as most trading card games, realistically, given that that's just the way trading cards have gone. Like if you get into Pokemon, it's also expensive, as I'm sure everyone knows. There's relatively few TCGs you can get into that's not going to be expensive. Yu-Gi-Oh, this again, but also I would say with that question, it depends on what you want to do. When you say how expensive is it, like to do what? Like, you know, how much is it to complete a set, to buy 1 or 2 products, to just, you know, play a game, that sort of thing. You know, it's there's a difference in terms of like overall how you do it. Because if you go crazy and you're like, oh, I want to buy like multiple collector booster boxes, and I'm not going to buy the normal Commander decks, I'm going to buy the collector's edition Commander decks. Yeah, you're going to spend tons of money. But you don't need to spend all that money because the collector edition Commander decks is just everything in this but in foil. Maybe you want the cards in foil, you can pay more for them. Do you want to pull lots of different alternate art cards out of packs? Well, you can do that in collector boosters. But if you just want mechanically unique cards, get the normal play boosters. You know, there's stuff like this. And then as always with any trading card game, buying single cards on the kind of secondary market is typically always the easiest way to do this sort of thing. But yeah, it is going to be expensive because this is going to be a these IP based sets are going to be particularly kind of collectors orientated and stuff like that. So Magic cards, I forget these days because they've changed the pack layout so much over the years. Like how many cards are actually in a pack these days? It's like 14 or 15. If I remember correctly. Like if we open this up, does it get a bit bigger? Yeah, 14 cards in a pack. Keeping in mind that the pack layout is like you always get like a basic land in a pack. I think there's always a foil. Is there always a foil in Magic? I forget. They switched it a few times in recent years. But you get a certain amount of commons, a certain amount of uncommons. You'll always get at least a rare in a pack, and then there's like slots where this can also be a rare if you get like lucky in the pack, that sort of thing. So the packs are quite heavily filled with cards because of course it's built for draft play as well. So if you have like 8 people and you sit down at a table, you can draft decks that way. You can do it sealed. So there's that whole thing. And again, for anyone kind of wondering a little bit more, there's highly likely to be like 250 plus cards in the main set, then an additional like 100 art variants of some of those cards. So if you want to get everything, you are probably talking at like, there's going to be like 350, maybe 400 cards, factoring in everything, given that like there'll be play boosters, which is mostly the standard cards. Collector boosters is probably maybe your easy way to pull variant cards out of packs. There will be certain cards that are specific and exclusive to the commander decks. There will be specific versions of cards that are like promo cards in some of these gift bundles. And it's like, there's a lot of stuff. So I'll need at least 25 packs. Keeping in mind it's random as well. Like, sure, you will get that many cards maybe out of that many packs, but you are going to pull multiples of like the commons and the uncommons before you see all the rares and mythic rares. So like, you have to think of it that way. That what is the most efficient way to get the cards that you want? And it probably isn't just opening up packs upon packs upon packs. It is, again, probably the best recommendation here is, if you just want like one copy of like almost every single card, probably the recommendation is that you basically don't open any packs and you just buy everything on the singles market. That might actually be the kind of best way to do it. As in, I think everyone gives this advice for anyone getting into TCGs is basically only open up packs, like booster packs, if you like opening booster packs. Because it's kind of fun, but it is not really an effective way to super build your collection in that way. So when it comes to products, probably what you want to buy is stuff like the decks, where it's a set group of cards, that there's no randomness in the decks. You just, once the deck list is released for what's in each of the commander decks, it's those cards, and there's no, I'll get different ones if I buy this. No, that's the same. It's the same here. But the packs obviously are random. So that's one of those things, is like when it comes to product buying, it's like, sure, buy your set card product, like the starter set, commander decks, maybe buy a bundle or something like that, a gift pack type thing. But yeah, only go for these if you like actually enjoy opening up packs and want to do that, want that experience. Otherwise, like, yeah, you probably are better just buying single cards. Let me see, can I quickly maybe find something that might give you a sense of this. Let me switch to this. Yeah, just as an example of this. So the European like singles place where you buy stuff from typically is this website here, Card Market. So if we go to the most recent set that's literally just come out, Ether Drift for Magic, we go to singles. You can see here, there's like 291 cards listed here. if I filter by, what are we doing? Price most expensive first. I actually have no idea what this is. So okay, there's one card in the set, this one, that's actually quite sought after, that's going for 35. Otherwise, you know, it drops down. The Ether Spark is an $18 card, and then it drops to under 10 for some of these ones. And then you can sort of start to see for an individual cards that it really starts to drop after that. And then all of a sudden, yeah, after about the first 10 to 15 cards, every card is under like $2 or €2. And most of them are just a couple of cents. Yeah, most of the set at like rare, uncommon, common and stuff like that is going to be kind of like basically bulk, 2-3 cent. So that's the way you kind of need to consider it, is that like, okay, like basically 95% of the set, you will be able to buy one copy of every card for like the amount of cards times like 2 or 3 cent. And then the money is going to be more in the higher value cards. So that remaining 5%, you have to factor in that like, okay, there's going to be like 10 cards that cost $1, a few cards that cost $2, and then okay, I might have to splash out for some of the really sought after cards. But even though it seems crazy if you're not into TCGs that you might have to pay $30-40 for one card, how many packs would you have to open to get that card? That's what you need to ask yourself about this. That like, considering like a booster box of Magic cards probably costs like $200 for 30 packs. So each pack costs about like $5, $6, $7, give or take. The idea is most packs you open, the value you are getting out of that pack, it's probably like $1, if not well under that, in terms of how much the cards are actually going to cost. So most packs you open, you can buy what you pulled out of the pack for maybe 50 cents afterwards. Only if you get really lucky and pull a good card are you getting more value than the pack was worth. So that's the way you have to think about it. So even though that card costs 35, you could open 5 packs and pull $2-3 worth of cards, or you could just buy the one card that you wanted. And that is the way you have to think about it with these TCG type games, is that like you are guaranteed a certain amount of pulls out of like booster boxes, but you don't know if you'll get the right pulls. So like this card is a mythic rare that costs 35. This one down here is also a mythic rare, but it costs 189. And look, the avatar stuff is going to be priced higher because it's going to be sought after by avatar collectors, Magic collectors, and that sort of thing. Because it's an IP based set, there's going to be more of a run on it. So you have to probably factor in that the mythic rare Aang is actually probably going to be like 50 or maybe even more. I actually have no real sense for this. If we go back, what if I go to the Lord of the Rings set, actually, that might be a good judge. Where would that be? Yeah, here we go. Lord of the Rings set. How are we going here? Okay, so the One Ring is the most expensive card at 48.30. So that's not actually too bad. Obviously, I'm sure many people know, there was a 1-of-1 super fancy One Ring that literally I think was sold for like $2 million or something like that. It was actually crazy. But if you just want a standard copy of the One Ring, it's that. So I don't know, it might not be super crazy for Avatar, but like you're talking about that range where there will be 1 or 2 cards that cost like $20-30. And that might seem crazy to you, but actually you're probably better off just buying it that way if you're a collector, of course. So that's my thing, is like I want to do some pack opening videos on YouTube, and that's why I'm going to be buying some booster packs, like a box probably. But with this set, I'm definitely probably going to be buying a lot of singles primarily. So that's going to be my approach for it, basically. So, that's the big thing here. Is also like, if you do want product, you probably should pre-order it maybe as soon as you can, just because there might be a run on it initially. So stuff like, say, commander decks, especially if some of those cards in the commander decks are looking quite good, they might be things that you want to pre-order straight away, because there's no randomness to them. It's just, hey, you can get those cards in there. And those ones you want to buy the products, because it's not a booster pack, it's a set product, basically. So there's that. I'll do videos, I think, closer to the time when we get information properly on the Avatar products, maybe helping people in this regard. But right now, we don't have to worry about it. And for, I suppose, to answer the question there in chat, when will we get to see some of the Avatar stuff? This is probably the best judge. The Final Fantasy set is out June 13th, and they previewed their first cards like earlier this week. So effectively in or around like 4 months before the Final Fantasy set, they started to show off cards. I'm guessing it will be the same for Avatar, which is in November, so July. San Diego Comic-Con, I think, seems very likely. Magic will have a presence there. I think they'll have a panel similar to the way they did the reveal. That will very likely be where they show off the first cards, is going to be at San Diego Comic-Con. That feels like an absolute lock just because of the timing. That's probably when kind of spoiler seasons for Avatar is going to begin. They'll show off some preview cards, and then I think usually it's maybe like the month before then that we get to see like everything. My guess, based on what they did for Final Fantasy, is they'll show off the commander stuff first and a couple of cards from the rest of the stuff, and kind of go from there. So that's that. But yeah, I guess bringing the stream sort of to a close. Let me know in the comments any final questions or things you want to talk about. But otherwise, yeah, I'll be wrapping this up pretty soon now. Next stream, pretty obvious, I think, will be to cover the new Korra comic, The Mystery of Pension Island, the Mako comic. That's out March 4th/5th. That whole thing. Okay, that's interesting, actually. Let's cover that. Dark Horse Avatar. Team Avatar Treasury Omnibus. Okay. That is new. November 11th, 2025. This is the first 3 one-shots collected together, and we were kind of waiting for this. Not a super exciting announcement because it is just a reprint, obviously, but it's something. It's another release for the year. They are making sure, I guess at this point, confirmation, everything's getting an omnibus release. So yeah, the plan is, if a book gets collected, it's getting a standard release, a library edition release, and an omnibus release. So that's nice to see, certainly for people who just want to specific formats and that sort of thing. So that's nice. But yeah, like I said, the Mako comic's out the 4th and 5th of March, so not that far away at all. And I'll probably be doing a stream, not the weekend of the release, probably the weekend afterwards. So that'll be like, what date would that be? March 16th, maybe. That probably would roughly be when the next stream would be. And then also there would be another stream not too far afterwards covering Ashes of the Academy as well. And then a bunch of stuff should hopefully be happening. There'll be CinemaCon, where hopefully we'll get some news about like big stuff from CinemaCon. Things might slow down a little bit after that, kind of May, June. But we'll build up for San Diego Comic-Con, where there hopefully should be some big stuff like Magic Avatar Magic the Gathering, and hopefully big convention plans for the Avatar Studios stuff as well. But yeah, other than that, I guess it's time to wrap up the stream. Pretty happy with how this one went overall. We covered a lot of ground. Again, if you're wondering, the stream will be up basically immediately afterwards to watch if you missed kind of some of it, all of it, came in late, that sort of thing. But otherwise, yes, thanks everyone for joining me on the stream tonight. And yeah, we'll be back next time out for the Mako comic, and then videos on any other news we get, of course, like usual. But yes, thanks for watching, and bye.